like I was saying earlier, it's like the perfect ramp setup where you have a little bit of everything, right? Every session. Woo! Brake tartar. Throw some of this on and your crappy brake setup will work perfectly. Outside and everything.
Dude, good sesh.
Hell yeah,
that was fun.
Thank you.
It's going.
Killed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was telling you earlier, but that is the perfect setup, I think, because you've got a quarter pipe, a small little tight vert wall, the banks that you can maneuver, and then on top of that, you've also got that big bank with the sub box. That is the ideal setup, I think.
Glad you like it. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I'm stoked on it. It definitely, I mean, yeah, it does the trick. Gets you through winter for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's the main thing, I guess, out here, right? I barely rode over the winter. I think I rode 2-3 times, so yeah, it was not bad, but I'm definitely feeling it these days, so.
Having it at home, too, is way too convenient. Like,
right.
Just being able to, ride in the backyard, it's a treat.
Yeah, we have a buddy who, he built a bowl in his barn, just like an extra chicken barn that he has, and at first he was using that bowl all the time, and now anytime that I go out there, he's like, yeah, I haven't rode it since the last time you were here 6 months ago. I'm like, dude, come on, like, how do you have this incredible bowl and just not use it at all? But I guess he's just busy, man, you know? But
well, you get bored of the same ramp all the time too.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because you can't change it around, you can't maneuver it like you can here with the banks, or you can move the banks and the ledges. So
yeah,
I think he gets kind of bored of that, so he has to get out of it.
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
It can be hard to get a couple people to come by too. It's weird. You think, oh, you're going to build a ramp at home, you're going to ride all the time, and you don't. It's strange. Sometimes you do, but.
Fair enough. I always have a hard time riding without anybody else either. Like, sometimes it's fun to just go out with the headphones on and just cruise around. That's a lot of the times where, like, I'll just start pedaling and just go and find something. But typically, if I'm going to go out and ride and actually do stuff, I like to have someone there just because I've seen it way too many times with people just going out on their own. I have a good buddy who really, really messed himself up trying to do a kink trail on his own. He's like, just such a gnarly sender, and the way that he rides is kind of sketchy. He's very tall, so like on a BMX bike, he's already way forward on the bars, and yeah, just one time went and tried the kinker, and his front peg kind of came off on the flat and sent him right forward and knocked out cold for I think like 3-4 minutes, all on video, and like it's the wildest shit ever, man. The video has him just laying on the floor. This random dude comes over, sees him, calls 911, and then all of a sudden, fire truck, ambulance, cops, everything. And he managed to be okay, but it really took a while before he was back on a bike. So, and he's had a couple really bad falls. So
That's scary.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not gonna lie, I do ride alone quite a bit.
Right.
Even in the garage. I don't know. Some days I'm like, I need to just get that session in, almost more of like a workout. But you still get to do tricks, and it's more than the workout, but it just makes you feel so good. But
Right.
that barn or that garage has really bad cell service because it's like a steel building.
Right.
So usually when I go in there, I text someone and I'm like, "Hey, I'm riding."
Yeah, just in case I don't, wake up or something. But you always skate on your own. Like most times that you go to skate, you skate to the park, and on the way there, you're by yourself. And if there's anybody at the park,
Yeah, but the park, there's always someone at the park.
yeah,
So there's usually people there, and even in the streets, like you're gonna run into people. And I'm not at this point in my life doing anything that's gonna get me really messed up. So
fair enough.
but there are moments where I feel like I almost broke my ankle. We were like, oh, if I broke, because I don't bring my cell phone either, because I don't want to smash my phone. So I'm like, if I broke my ankle right now, there's no one here, I'd be pretty fucked.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I feel like you can, for the most part, though, kind of tone it down and take it just extra cautious and ride alone. But there's obviously a risk. One thing that's really intense is lake surfing in Ontario. People that surf on the Great Lakes.
Right.
You have to do it in the winter time, and a lot of people do it alone, which is wild. Like just going out in the middle of nowhere and just going into a big lake in a storm and just, yeah, those guys are wild. There's less injury risk, more like just overall hazard, I would say. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, dude, that's gnarly. Yeah, definitely never been surfing. I'd love to try it someday, but I'm not a great swimmer already. So like deep water kind of scares the shit out of me for the most part. Yeah, I like doing stuff on land, you know?
I feel that.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to say too, by the way, you as a rider are one of my favorite riders out there. Like your style and just your technique and what you're able to do on a bike always really impresses me. Very creative too. I think a lot of people in street riding kind of tend to stick towards the same style stuff. And whenever like Mike Gray Park comes out, there's a lot more in there that I really like, you know? There's a lot of like really cool spot usage, and even the times that we've went out and filmed stuff, it's really cool to see some of the spots that, you know, maybe I'll show to somebody else and they won't really have anything, but you're always up for the task. So
I appreciate that. I feel like for me, like you said, a lot of people have similar tricks. I feel like I do have a lot of similar tricks to a lot of people, but I try really hard to find my own spots and just find my own setups to do them in my own way. You know, like it's amazing how much this sport is not the riding, it's the idea.
definitely.
You have to put because there's a lot of people who have the potential to make really good web videos, and they're not, just because they don't really have that vision for like making a video and seeing the value and working with a high level filmer and how that all works. And like, because you see some videos where people work with filmers who are maybe more like entertainment filmers, where it's quick cuts, and with like, it's in BMX and skateboarding, it's very particular, the filming, like it's kind of already mapped out. There's kind of already a layout like for web videos. Like you can't, you know, like you don't cut a clip in the middle of it and then cut to another angle, or like you do, but like there's just like there's things that you kind of, there's like entertainment type of film videos, and you can really tell those kinds of people who do it like kind of like mainstream video styles, and then there's like the core styles for like web videos. And I feel like there's obviously a ton of people who know the formula, but there's a surprising amount of people who have the potential to make amazing videos, but they're not working with the right filmers. They're not going out there and finding their own spots and thinking outside the box. And there's obviously a ton of people doing that as well, but it's amazing just how powerful of a tool just everything besides the riding is, you know. You can,
Definitely, yeah. I think a big thing too is that a lot of people don't see the value in making a full part anymore, right? Everything's on Instagram, everything's quick and whatnot. There's a rider that's local to Ontario, one of my favorite, like, you know, amateur dudes out there. Good friend of mine too, Johnny Cabardo. Kid is unreal, like so good on a bike, and he really puts in the effort, you know? He was riding for Kill 'Em All last year, he rides for Harvester. He really got fucked up in Montreal a couple weeks ago. I'm happy to see that he's okay, but I think that he's going to have to start to kind of figure some stuff out a little bit and kind of work around like, okay, now I kind of see the risks that are involved with this, which I think a lot of people who get really good really quickly don't see that, right? I have friends who have only ever had one bad fall in their 10 to 15 years worth of BMX riding, right? And after an injury that keeps you off the bike for a while, you kind of, reevaluate things. But the point I was getting to is that this kid is just so good, so unreal on a bike, but he is so impatient where he can't see the value of like, oh, I need to wait a little while, take a year, film all the best stuff that I can and let my Instagram lack and instead put everything out all at once and get noticed, right? Because yeah, it's cool when somebody goes and does something huge, but that's not 15 minutes of fame, that's 15 seconds of fame now, where it's like people see it, they are like, cool, that's awesome, and they never think about it again. Whereas if you have a well-made video part and work for that, I think that has way more value, and it also shows that you're dedicated to something and that you can take your time and really see the value and make something that I think is appreciated a lot more,
I feel like it's become quite complex as well because now you can post that Instagram clip, and that clip, the one clip, might get more views than your whole web video.
Yeah.
So that's the other part. But what people need to remember is that if you want the top riders and all the core industry people to really take you seriously and see you as someone legit, you gotta make those videos. And it's a sacrifice of, like you said, followers, and you could have put those sessions into building your Instagram following. But if you invest all that time into a project, even if that project doesn't get a crazy amount of views, if the right people will see it, and that's how they really gain your respect, I feel like.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm going to let all these kids in on a little secret. After filming a video part, you can take those clips and post them to Instagram. That's fine. That's okay to do. You can do that. Like, I don't see why people don't do that, Like, you're going to put in that effort anyways. I post stuff from years ago all the time. I posted one somewhat recently of a roof drop that I did off of my buddy's house. It's like a 2-story house into his little skinny 12-foot wide by 5-foot high mini ramp. I posted that to Instagram recently. I still did it like 6-7 years ago, but you know what? You can post it at any point. You'll still get those views and that stuff that you care about. You're just going to wait a little bit longer, And that was my ender for my last video part in Space Goats. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's funny. But I definitely would love to see some more people do that. And I think that you make a really good point of you have to go out there and make a video part, because the dudes that are in the top of BMX have all done that. And the people that run BMX have all done that, right? Robbie Morales, who runs Cult, has video parts out there. The dude from Merit, oh my God, why is his name
Mike Brennan?
Yeah, Mike Brennan has incredible video parts, dude. And then obviously, it's throughout BMX. Like, most people that ride BMX and own a company have put out a video part at some point, right? So, and then in skateboarding too, there's tons, right? Like, Rodney Mullen has made incredible video parts, and he runs Almost. And then Tony Hawk, obviously, with Birdhouse. Like, you got to go out there and put in the work and really make something special,
Well, I also think that it's about having more than just one flash in the pan. Like, you need consistency, and you need to show you have like a lot of clips.
Yeah.
So it's not just like one awesome clip that a bunch of people watched at one time. Like, it's like you need to have a bunch of clips put together over the years, and then you can see the progression too of your riding as well. So you have like a lot more than just like that flash in the pan for that one hot minute.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, it's like no one cares 15 seconds later, right? So, but if you have a video part that people come back to all the time, then they can kind of watch it. And I mean, I think also you need to have something that's fun to watch. And I think lots of fun video parts are kind of cool. So it's not just like having one really great trick or one really good thing. You need to have a bunch of things that are fun to watch and go back to. Because like my favorite skateboarders aren't the best skateboarders are the ones that are most fun to watch. So I think that's kind of way more important, especially when it comes to having a video part. Like, have good music, have good, make it creative, make it fun to look at, and make it give people a reason to come back to it.
And if you work with a filmer or somebody who is able to edit your videos and really create a vision that shows just who you are with personality and whatnot, I think it works really well. Like, some of my favorite video parts just on their own have been like web videos from Denim Cox and Sauce the Boss. Like, those two as a duo make such great video parts, man. And Denim is such an unreal rider, and he's so gnarly. And then even in his personality, it really comes through with the video, the music, and everything else, right? I think that's how you can make yourself unique. And I definitely love to see some more people doing it, I know that Zach Simiak, local to Ontario, is awesome at that. He does hold back. I have clips of him from a few years ago that he's still holding on to. They might show up in the next food video. I filmed his ender in the most recent food video. It's a curved wall ride to pegs on the top. Super sick. I took so many people to that spot, and instantly, he saw that and was like, I'm going for it. And he had metal pegs on, nice crusty ledge, so 200 tries after going through it, he sticks the pegs on and then goes right over the bars first, and then tries it again and gets up there, and nice grind sound, everything. Perfectly pulled. Yeah, definitely, if you guys have not seen that, check that video out. That's one of my favorite clips that I've ever filmed, too. I felt really good behind the lens on that.
Shout out to Zach. He's absolutely been killing it in the Ontario scene, and also a kid that is consistently smiling, stoked, in a good mood, nice to everyone. So big shout out to him, and he's absolutely ripping it. And what you were saying about consistency, I feel like that's the industry is literally made up of people that love the sport so much that they just can't get away from it. It's like people who do it for 10 years, it's not long enough. It has to be a lifelong passion that you're not doing for any reason besides the fact that you just love it so much that you just have to fucking do it and keep doing it. And, you just, the people that are like Dak, for example, you just see how much content year after year, these guys are killing it. And it's just, it's insane, man. You gotta do a lot. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
Can't believe we're back on this.
Dude, it's worth it though. Top 5 video parts of all time, Dakota Roche's Talk is Cheap part is 100% in there. It's like a variety of street riding, right? It is just street riding, but it shows all the best clips on all the best spots, right? He's not just riding one thing. And if you want to stick with one thing, a good example is Christian Regal with his, is it demolition part? I think it is demolition, where it's just grinds. There's one clip in there that isn't a grind, and that's it. The rest of it is all grinds. You've got Dennis with the intro about stopping abuse to handrails and whatnot. And
he hates that one. He hates that intro.
Yeah. Dude, I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I feel like for these kids too, you have to, there's a point where you're becoming a man, and now you have to go from the kid who was always oh, that kid's really sick, he's gonna be good one day, to now you have to level yourself up to be a man, and you have to now, if once you're in the big pond, you're putting yourself not up against the top dudes, but you're in that pond now. So if you want to make a name for yourself, you have to kind of man up. You gotta do something that people are yo, that, he is not a kid anymore coming up.
Yeah,
he's legit now.
Yeah, you don't want you don't want them to think you're good for a kid. You don't want that added on to the end of he's really good for a little kid, because by that point now you're just a dude. So you better be just really good as this dude.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to for kids, you see kids who ride 16 or 18-inch wheeled BMX bikes, which makes sense for their size, but then they get bigger and now they're on this smaller BMX, and it's okay, so when are you gonna get the 20s? I think you're ready now, and I remember Sean Ricani when he was like 14, he was on 20s. Like he was a little kid, but he had a full-size bike when he was like super young.
Right.
And that was like, I feel like people had respect for that. I did. I watched it. I was like, wow, like that kid's tiny and he's just handling that full-size BMX.
Yeah, man, it's wild. There was so when I used to work at All In Skate Park in Zurich, Ontario, there was this kid that would always come there named Gage Rothridge. This dude, to this day, he's now an adult man, is about this tall, like literally 4 or 5 feet tall. He is very, very small. But this dude, from the age of 11 or 12, rode a 20-inch BMX bike with Chicago bars, where it just does not make sense for him at all, right? But he was an absolute shredder. This dude was so unreal on a bike where he's doing triple pendulums over box jumps, huge, boosting higher than anybody in the park, tail whipping the box jump, doing all of these crazy gaps, transfers, ninja drops, everything. He was unreal, dude, and he had such a great like style of riding and whatnot. And that was always the thing, though, is that like people were mainly blown away that he wasn't on a 16 or an 18-inch bike, that he was on a 20-inch. And even to this day, same setup, same height, same everything, and the dude still shreds, even when he like hasn't rode in quite a while. Yeah, super cool guy. And he definitely, like, I remember him and little Dorian had like they were in a contest together at the park, and he was like really trying his best, and obviously Dorian was too, but it's funny to think that they were the same age, right? Because Dorian had he had no height on that guy. He was very tiny. He made Gage look big.
He had 18-inch wheels too, right? Or 16.
Yeah. Dorian was definitely on I think his little 16 or 18-inch bike, so it's just all different things in there, right? I mean, an 18-inch bike is smaller, it's lighter, it's going to move around quicker. Obviously, the body size of the person riding it is a little bit different, but I don't know, man. I know dudes that are real tall that ride just a 20-inch BMX bike, right? I think that 20-inch is kind of what you're looking for. Unless you're Jim C. Because if you're Jim Selinsky and you're doing stuff on a 26-inch where you're still doing tricks that nobody else does, that's fucking cool in my mind. It's like 20-inch or bigger, and if you're going bigger, you better be doing wild shit.
Yeah, once your back can't take the 20s,
yeah,
then all to you. All power to you to get 24s or 26s to stay biking.
Yeah, Jim was like, he definitely earned that, because it's just him showing off that Sunday can make a good fucking bike, right? Or it's like, who else can do a downside hand plant on a quarter pipe on a 20-inch bike, let alone a 24 or 26? Like, the list is short, you know? There's maybe 20 dudes on earth that do that trick. And one of them lives in Ontario. Shout out to Jeff, big burly, muscly Jeff. Dude, guy is wild. So good on a bike. He's like a strong man, so he goes into these like competitions where they'll pick up like logs and fridges over their head and stuff.
Red beard?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That guy's
so good.
Absolute legend.
Yeah, super fun too. He's I think Busch Light is actually his choice of beer.
Hey.
But, yeah, he's a super good dude.
My guy.
Yeah, he's rad.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
So you guys, for anyone, well, obviously they'll know by the caption, but so Cam, you're Wayne's son.
That's right.
Pretty crazy, because we just rode the garage. Wayne was shredding the skateboard. You were shredding the BMX.
Well, I don't know about shredding the BMX. I was definitely trying. I was riding, you know? I think there's one good line in there that I got, but yeah.
Dude, it's sick though. Like, it feels like we're just three homies hanging out, but you guys are father and son.
Yeah, it's kind of always been like that. I mean, we've always been pretty close, pretty tight. Like I was saying earlier, it's like he's been coming to the skate park since he was old enough to walk, so it kind of comes by it honestly, as far as like that stuff goes. Like always, both of my kids have always just kind of been growing up on skateboards. And so, I mean, BMX is close enough, but it's not exactly what I do. So it kind of feels like it's his own thing too. So it's kind of nice that it's not like a carbon copy, I guess, of what I do, which is kind of nice.
Did going to the skate park come from you actually wanting to go skate? Was it
yeah, all the time. Yeah, he would just come to the skate park with me and my friends, and we just skate. Because I'm like, well, weekend dad stuff. Because we had kids really young. but divorced really young as well. So it's kind of like, well, it's the weekend, so I'm going skateboard with my friends, and I have kids, so they're just coming with us, and that's kind of how it always went down.
How old were you at that time? Like when you started going to the skate park with your kids?
Probably as long as probably since they could to walk or stand, like that kind of thing. Like
So
I've been
25 or like
yeah, easily. Yeah, I would say so.
that's wild because I'm 30 now and
Yeah.
I don't have kids, and just to think about, I can only imagine having kids 9 years ago. Like your 20s would have been a completely different. Well, I don't know. Would it make your 20s different or?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, like all my friends are having kids now. And so it's like when I had kids at a young age, I couldn't, they were all traveling the world and doing things, and I'm stuck at home with kids, which, stuck is the wrong word, but, it's changed your life a lot. But now it's like I get to travel and I get to do all the things, and they're at home with their kids. And I'm like, now, but the difference is when we travel, I don't have to stay in a hostel. I can stay in a nice hotel, because, at this point in my life, I have enough money that I don't have to. You can rent a car and you can really experience things, where they were just like, I'm moving out west, and they had like $800 in their bank account, and then just like, I guess I'm getting a job and I'm doing these things where like it's a nice adventure, I guess, when you're young, but I kind of had that stability when I was a lot younger. Me and my friend had kind of talked about this recently enough, and by recently like 10 years ago, but it's like he had just come back from out west, and I was so jealous because I'm like, man, like I wish I could travel and just pick up and go like that, and you have that and I don't have that, and the big thing is he's like, I can do that because I don't have a family, I don't have a wife, I don't have kids. He's like, I have nothing, I don't have a career, I have like nothing holding me here. Where he's like, you had all that stuff, you had the kids, you have a career, you have all these things that I want, and it's like, it's kind of interesting, like it's the whole like the grass is kind of greener somewhere else, or maybe you don't realize like what the personal reflection, right? Like you have to kind of look at yourself in the mirror and go, you know what, I am doing okay, and life is really good, and maybe you don't realize what you have until someone else points it out, I guess. So
and it appears that you kept being able to do things that you were passionate about, even with having kids, where it seems like some people have to compromise and stop doing things they like as much, or their job is more a real, like a job that they don't actually love to do. But you're a tattoo artist, which you must be a passionate artist, right?
Yeah, that's been my whole life is kind of based on that. Because I think I worked at McDonald's when I was a teenager, and that's about it. And that was enough for me to be like, well, I don't want to ever do a job because doing a job is bullshit. So it's like, I'm gonna do things that are fun that also pay you money. Because I always looked at it, and it's kind of naive when you're young, but I was like, there's lots of money out there, and people make a living doing the things they love doing. So why would you ever do something that you don't want to do? And I it's not lost on me because like I've been tattooing for almost 30 years now. Like I think I was an apprentice in 1995, so it's coming on 30 years of being a professional tattoo artist.
Wow.
And so that's a long time, and I've seen the industry grow and change over the years too. But I find like, when I look at it then now with that like retrospective, it's like, I have a lot of clients that work jobs that they hate, but they come and they give me all their money to do something that I would do for free. And so it's not lost on me how important that is. Like I have so much respect for people where it's like a lot of the younger people in this industry they just expect people to walk in the door and just give them whatever. So I find like, there's a lot to me. I realize just how valuable it is to have all that stuff, And then of course, to be able to like have that closeness with my family too, right? Because me and my dad, it's like we were kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And so it's kind of nice that, me and my son are kind of tight and we hang out, and like when we're not, like, like we still, even though he doesn't live at home anymore, we still get together. And we used to, when he was younger, it was kind of, there'd be lots of times where it'd be a pain in the ass where I'd have to take him to like joyride, like, and it's like, well, it's my whole Sunday, right? It's like I pack up a bike, pack up all your friends and throw all these bikes in the truck and drive a joyride, which basically means I got to hang out all afternoon because I can't skate there. So I'm just hanging out while you guys ride. But like I realized at some point, like there's going to come a time when he's not going to be asking me, because at some point you got friends and you get, so I'm like, take it all, like drink it all in and just appreciate those moments, And it's kind of funny how it's still at this point we still do stuff together, It's like I've been training the Muay Thai for a couple of years, And so now he started training with me, and so now I have a good, consistent training partner. And it's nice to be able to go and do it together and have that kind of thing that we can do together still, you know. So
that's so cool that you that's really cool. And so, I mean, how much that must have rubbed off on you to like follow passions, right? Like, or was there influence for, oh, you know what, I might get a normal job, or that probably
never. No, like yeah. I'm 27 and I've only really started to figure out my life this year, just because I really wanted to spend a lot of time having a good life and something that I could look back on and say, hey, you know what, like, there was moments where I was struggling, you know, where like I didn't want to ask for money or anything like that, and I was eating, you know, with maybe $20-$30 for the whole week, and you're just trying to figure it out, you know, and that's fine. That's something that you should do. I think it's something that people should experience. But that was always my thing, is I really wanted to follow my passion, right? So when I started the podcast, that was kind of like my way of like, well, maybe this will branch out and this will be something that eventually I might be able to make a living doing. And it wasn't always my intention to do that. It was more or less like, you know what, this could be a possibility. It's out there, people do that. And it's a lot more realistic than just filming BMX videos, right? Because for years, I think for 8 years, all I did was just work on BMX DVDs, right? I did 2 different videos, and they all take years and years and years to do, and just, you know, scrounging money together from shitty jobs just to go out and do that instead, right? And that's kind of what you would live for, is like work throughout the week just to have those weekend moments, right? And luckily, doing a podcast kind of gave me this realization of like, there is ways that you can go out and make money where it's more of a job, but it's not, right? So I got really into screen printing, and that's what I do now as a like full-time career, is I'm a screen printer. So with that, it is something that goes back into BMX in a different way, because I can go out and print shirts for people who need stuff for BMX jams or BMX events, or if you have a brand or anything like that. And then just, you know, it's another form of art essentially, and that's kind of what I feel like I am, is an artist in a way. You know, it sounds kind of douchey to say that, especially about podcasting, because at the end of the day it's just a conversation, but I do think that it takes talent, and it does take hard work as well, mainly hard work. But yeah, I don't know, I've always kind of worked jobs I hated up until about a year ago, just to get through that, you know, and follow a passion instead, and really focus solely on that. So
well, I mean, if you started a business, then sounds like, I mean, that's another thing that, following in the footsteps, you started the tattoo business, right? Yeah. You started your own tattoo business. And I mean, that's, at what age did you start that?
Well, it's kind of
or
funny.
At what
well, no, I was tattooing people in high school. So I was like tattooing, like making my own machines and tattooing my friends. So before I even got an apprenticeship in '95, I was still tattooing people. And got an apprenticeship, worked for a bunch of, not a bunch, but a few different tattoo shops. And so that's kind of like, I think that's important before you open your own place, is to kind of experience that. And not just to like, because you're working with other people, but it's like you're a colleague rather than a boss, right? So once you're a boss, people treat you differently. So when you can just be friends with people, and I've got a lot of friends, like most of my friends are tattoo artists now. So, and it's kind of interesting how that, I'm sure you see that too with, you know, being a pro BMX rider, like all your friends are probably pro BMX riders, and people are like probably baffled by that. But it's like, for me, all my friends are just tattooers, and you know, some of them are good. Most of them are really good tattooers, and I'm not trying to big up my friends, but it's kind of like a lot of them are really good tattooers too. So you're kind of on that level of like, they're high level pros, and somehow I got mixed in with that. And like my tattooing is pretty good too, but it's like, to be mixed in with all that stuff, it's kind of nice. But I think on going back to that whole thing with you know, I always thought for myself and for my son anyways, is that like to be really successful, it's like, it doesn't matter how much money you're putting in the bank, because that's not really that important. Like, that's not really, for me, it's not a measure of success. I think it's like, how much of your life are you living, you know, the way that you're happy, you know? Because if you're working a job you hate, but you have a stack of money, it's like, what's the point? you know. But it's like, if you can actually every day, if you spend most of your life doing the things you love doing, then you're successful, right? And then you actually don't need to have a whole bunch of extra money in the bank, because you're actually happy doing what you're doing. So you're not trying to pad up your life by, well, I got this awesome car, and so that makes me happy. And because that stuff is really fleeting. Like, it's really funny how quickly the appeal wears off of stuff like that. Like, you look at something you really want, and then you get it, and you don't care so much, right? So it's like, what you're doing every day is what makes you happy. So
I feel like, I mean, I just met you, but like, I feel like you're such a cool dad, like such a cool influence, that I could see myself wanting to follow the exact footsteps almost, like, but it also sounds like you're influencing, find your passion, do what you love. But like, was there a point where it was like, oh, I want to be an artist because you're an artist, so I want to do tattoos and draw?
For me, it's a little bit different, right? I think that a lot of people that I talk to are like, oh, your dad's so talented and whatnot. And me being there my whole life, I know that it wasn't just talent or luck. It's a lot of hard work, right? And I have never really been too much into drawing or anything like that. I've tried. I have terrible penmanship. I just do. It's a lot harder for me. But obviously, if I put in the hard work and the effort, who knows, right? But at the end of the day, tattoos are something that I love, but it's not something that I would pursue. It's just not. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that in reality, like, if that was to happen for me, that would have been awesome as well. But that also puts on this pressure of, okay, well, if I'm going to be here, I need to make sure that I'm constantly doing a good job and being better than what you are doing, because I don't want to just look like I got this for no reason, right? That was always something that growing up, my dad had mentioned, if you ever come to apprentice or work for me, you're going to have to work way harder than anybody else, because everybody is just going to assume that you just walked in and got the job, no questions asked, right?
Right, I see what you mean.
And on top of that too, like, I think my dad gave me a really good thing throughout life of like raising me, saying, hey, you don't have to be like me. You can do things differently. And growing up, I was in this tiny little town that had a lot of shitty people that I didn't really get along with, and a lot of bullying and whatnot, and I never really fit in at all. And I think that it has a lot to do with just the parenting types from that town, right? A lot of those people raise kids to go and work a job that they hate, because they work a job that they hate. And
right.
For me, it's like, that's all I've been looking for, is something where I can work and enjoy it, because that was the biggest thing to me. It wasn't about going out and learning how to tattoo. It was, okay, you should do something that you love every day and that you will, enjoy, and that you're going to want to learn and grow with. So I think I've really accomplished that in the last year, and it's kind of helped me really feel a lot better about myself,
That's awesome. It seems like BMX too, was that where you felt like you kind of fit in? Like, was that Absolutely. At the place you're like, oh, I found my people, like I can...
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too depressing, but like, literally growing up, I was bullied relentlessly, to the point on where like, I did not fit in with these kids because I didn't play hockey, I didn't do any of that stuff. I just didn't really get along with them either, because I had a different perspective in life. And I think that BMX was the first time that I felt like, oh, these people are just cool. They're into the thing that I'm into, and I actually fit in a lot better here. It's a lot of people who, in a way, anybody who rides BMX or skates is a little kooky, It's a little like, oh, that's kind of weird, right? Like, you're hanging out at the skate park.
Out of the norm, I guess.
Yeah, it's more normalized than ever, which is good. I think that's a good thing to do. But at the same time, it's like, that was the first community that I ever felt like, any kind of like acceptance in,
A lot of character
in
the industries.
Yeah, you meet your fair share of people who are a little interesting, There's a lot of people in BMX who are just normal dudes too, There was a guest on my show a while ago. His name's Chris Dewar, and for years he was just a bylaw officer, and he would manage to finally follow his dream and open up a company that just goes out and makes paved pump tracks. And they make incredible pump tracks. He actually got the contract to do the one in Waterloo where I live, and that's where he's from as well. So he really went hard on that one and made it the best pump track in Ontario. And that's not just me saying that because Chris is a close friend, but that is actually the best pump track in Ontario. It is one of the biggest, and the variation of obstacles there is incredible. It's not just rollers. He's got kickers that have like roller landings and whatnot. Everything is kind of divided so that you can ride it as an amateur or somebody who, you know, has just stepped on a bike, all the way up to somebody like myself who goes there and sees just different gaps and transfers and different lines and whatnot. And yeah, he really put in a lot of work there.
That's sick.
Yeah, just another case of somebody who really followed their passions too, you know?
Yeah, businesses like that are very cool. People who have trail building businesses or ramp building, like even the skate park companies, New Line skate parks, like those companies, I'm sure they started as dudes who just skateboarded, and then they just kind of fell into
definitely
becoming the main, oh, let's start a business making skate parks, and then all of a sudden they're doing every skate park in every town. And
yeah, I think a good example of that is Jordan from Ride and Ramp Co., another close friend of mine, but he just goes out and builds people incredible backyard ramps. You know, he's a incredible carpenter, he's an engineer, so his day job when he goes in, he just goes and designs bridges. I've been to his house before, and he'll have little miniature scales of a bridge that he's building, and then he's got to figure out how he's going to take this 11-foot long bridge to his like office and basically put it into a wind tunnel and test to make sure that, okay, under these circumstances, will this construction work and whatnot. And he's one of the smartest people in BMX, in my opinion, if not the smartest person. There's a lot of like really nerdy things about him, but he also has a really cool parenting style where when he grew up, his dad is actually an animator, and so is his brother, and they work on big scale, like Disney, I believe, movies. So these people have, you know, for years also been artists, and that's kind of the thing with Jordan, is that his art isn't, you know, pen and paper and whatnot, it's wood and a saw, you know, because the ramps that he builds are actual pieces of art. It's wild, and they work so well. Yeah.
That is really cool to have the engineering background on top of building, just because, I mean, I build some stuff, and just from doing that, there's so many times where if you knew how, you know, if you knew the load bearing for certain things or how much weight it could take and all that, and this beam will hold this much weight, there's so much of that would come in handy building ramps probably. And like even in the garage there, I built those shelves for the space brace boxes. It's a 12-foot span, and I used 2x12s, but like just the engineering of, okay, how much weight can this 2x12 at a 12-foot span hold? Like,
right,
you know,
without like a support in the middle.
Actually knowing the real numbers, like it's definitely, and for what he does, building all these absolutely insane ramps.
Yeah, he built Mike Vargas' ramp. He helped build Pat Casey's ramp. He's done Daniel Sandoval's ramp. Some of the biggest pros in the world, you know.
That's cool.
Unreal.
Right from Ontario too.
Yeah,
that's
just down the street.
so
like
cool.
Literally a 40-minute drive from my place. Like, it's not far at all, which is awesome.
That's sick.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Anyways, I guess to go back on like BMX and kind of how, like, you know, that all started. You know, you go to the skate park with him enough, and at some point you're gonna want to try something. And for years, you know, I'd kind of mess around on a skateboard, nothing crazy, just, you know, push a little bit and whatnot. And I can't even ollie a skateboard, but when I got a bike, you know, I instantly kind of felt like something different. There was like that, like, oh, I want to jump this, you know, this is a little bit different. And that's all it took. We just went out, and I got a BMX bike, and then the next week that I saw him, he had a BMX bike. And then a couple weeks later, I have a new BMX bike because, your other ones, you know, it's okay, but we got to get you something a little better. So then, here we are all these years later, right? We started out at these crappy little dirt jumps, and here we are.
So was skateboarding, was it something that at one point you were kind of actually trying to pursue, or was it always just like a fun passion? Or was there like a transitional time where like you were kind of like you did it kind of competitively, and then you had to kind of find a way to do it just for fun and not be so emotionally invested? Like, was that part of it for you at one age, would you say?
Well, I think when I was a lot younger, I wanted to, there's like, I want to be a pro. I think everybody has that, and I was doing demos and stuff back then, like little things. But it's like, especially in Ontario in the late 80s, it's like, none of the pros were really coming from here. And there wasn't a lot of infrastructure. Like, there was no skate parks back then. So, and I mean, even when you think about like having a video camera back then, you had to be super rich to even have a camera, like what we have on our phones now. And it's kind of interesting because if you think of social media and the way that people can film themselves now, and like you can make that video right on your phone. You can make your whole video part of your phone, and the pros, like the people that are like, the company owners, they could see that, and they could be like, oh, this guy's got some talent, but that didn't exist when I was younger. And like, it's kind of interesting because now it's like there's 1,000, let's say there's millions of voices just screaming, like, look at me, look at my BMX riding, look at my skateboarding. So it's like back then you had to have someone like see it and be like, oh, that guy does have some skill or some talent. And I think that was kind of like, but it was a natural progression from then, right? It was kind of like, at that point, I'm like, I just wanted to I kind of started getting away from skateboarding a little bit and just kind of got more into the tattoo world and really kind of focusing on that. And like, I think I quit for a couple years. There was 2 years where I quit. Like I got injured and I just was like, well, I'm just going to tattoo. I'm getting old, back then I was getting old, I was 22. And I was like, well, can't be on a skateboard all the time. I hurt my knee, and then like, I just walked by a skate shop one day and I saw the skateboards and I was like, oh, I want to get back into skateboarding. But at that point in time, it's like the industry was all about skateboarding, like ramp skateboarding, and everything was, we did street skating, but it was kind of like skating had changed from that big fat wide skateboard to like the traditional shape you see now. And so back then it was like you had to kind of relearn everything, and everything was kind of changing and going in a weird direction. So yeah, that was kind of like, it kind of felt like I was aging out of it. And then when I got back into it, it kind of felt like I found my home again. So I was like, oh, this is kind of something I always wanted to do. So, but just not for fun so much, it's like for your own passions. I think that we all have that, where you're just like, I just want to learn this trick because I want to learn it. And then at some point when he got into BMX riding, I'm like, well, I'm going to get a bike, And I started just because I'm like, we back in the 80s, you had a BMX and you messed around. So I'm like, I'm going to get a bike and we'll just go together and we can do something together, And then I started like learning tricks, just nothing major, but I'm like, there's tricks I want to learn that I pursued. And I'm like, oh, I did this trick that I've always wanted to do. So I'm like, if I can do that on a bike, then I'm like, oh, I could probably start doing that. Because I was stagnating in skateboarding. I kind of hadn't learned new tricks in 10 years. So I was like, well, if I can learn new tricks on a bike, then I could probably do that on a skateboard. So I kind of made a list of things I wanted to learn and started doing that. So, and I have one for this summer. I have like a 10 trick list that I want to learn.
Hell
so
yeah.
Some of them are easy, some of them are harder, but it's like I want them and I want to get them on camera so I can at least check them off my list. But
you were saying that your dad was like total opposite, right? Like go to school, like was it traditional? Would that be the word? I don't know if that is, but like more like a normal route, like normal person. So like normal person.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so obviously you're like, you must have been kind of a creative dude from like early on. Like, was there a point where it's like, hey, go to college, do all this stuff, and you were like, well, I want to do, like, how did you find your own, like, how did you pursue your own passions, especially like earlier on when it was even weirder or like more out of the ordinary to pursue something you loved like that? Like, how did you fight the influences of going to college and doing normal stuff?
I think at that point it was kind of like, okay, so the short version is, it's like, grew up with ADHD in the 80s, so people didn't realize that was a learning thing. So it was just like, I was in the principal's office every day. So it was just like, why can't you just because it's either I'm drawing on my desk all day or I'm just like talking nonstop. And so either way I'm disrupting the class. So I was at that point, there was no going to college. Like by then, there was no like hope that I was going to college. Like it was just like, you're not going anywhere in life. That was kind of the idea. So I think that they were kind of happy to see, because I mean, in high school, it was like really into punk music. And my dad's, like he's a farmer, he's into country music. So like it was your different odds, right? You're dyeing your hair crazy. You're not like doing what they're doing, And I think that they were kind of happy to see the tattooing because I finally had like an outlet where all this stuff kind of merged, where it's like, oh, you can make a living. And I mean, I think up until maybe 10 years ago, I think my dad finally gets it that you can make a living doing this. Like, even though I've been making a good living forever doing this, it's been like I remember showing him like my stuff in tattoo magazines back in the probably early 2000s. And I'm like, hey, this is a tattoo I did. This is my name. Here's some stuff. And he'd just be like, oh, why would a girl get all those tattoos? And you're like, well, that's just like, it's not his thing at all.
It didn't like click in his head like that. It's like, well, no, the point is I did those tattoos. And anyways.
But he's not like, it's just, he means well, but he comes from a different world, right? He comes from a way different world where they just don't like knew it. You would never try to stand out. Where for me, it's like it's like when I look at that lifestyle, I'm like, that's not for me. I'm like, like you're saying, creative, right? Always using my imagination, always drawing and writing or doing something as a kid. So it's kind of like, and I think I always felt like an outsider compared to everybody else. You know, I never felt like when you see that life, that's not a life I want, you know. And I think that's what I was trying to circle back to with all the kids from your small town that you grew up in. Where it's like when you look at the life that they're gonna get, it's like that's not something you want anyways. So I'm like, why would I want this life? And for me, that was the big thing where it's like I don't want to grow up to be these people, right? Especially I don't say these people, but we both grew up in small towns that were full of like small town people, small minded people, right? So a lot of times it's that like
narrow-minded,
like they don't like things that are different, you know. And I remember that being a big deal. It's like if blue hair is crazy to you, it's like don't ever leave this town because like there is some crazy shit out there. If you know, if a person with a tattoo and blue hair is crazy, like don't ever leave this town because you're gonna see some crazy shit.
What I find so interesting though about like that whole way of life and that lifestyle and outlook is that it's I don't know if it's the way that you're born. I feel like that is kind of a way of a lifestyle where you're molded into, because like I feel like people are naturally born creative, and that's more like the side that you're more kind of in tune with when you're born is like the creative side, and that other mold that society tries to kind of put people in that's all like just pushed on you over and over and programmed into you
to make you smart enough to run the machines. That's all they just want you smart enough to push the buttons around the machines. And so that's kind of it, like sit you in a little box and like don't think too far out of that, because if you really think about it too much, then you're gonna get like pretty disappointed. So
and that's what's so cool is that a dad like you that does what he loves and is in tune with his passions and his creative side, it's like you want what's best for your son. And that's what I think maybe is almost part of that lifestyle. It's like I feel like they're too caught up being like jealous of other people or like, hey, you're doing that wrong, get back in the box that you're supposed to be in. And they're like, it takes away from focusing on the fact that you can just look out for people's best interests, want what's best for everyone, just be stoked for everyone, happy for them. If you love something, do it. Like, why is it so hard for people to do that, you know? Like it's
exactly.
I think for me too, it's kind of weird because my mom is the complete opposite, where like she has always just worked a job. She doesn't hate her job, but it's not like, you know, I'm sure that there's other passions in life that she would want to aspire to, but yeah, even that, like for years and years and years, I've always only ever heard from her, hey, you know, maybe you should find this kind of job instead, right? And my little brothers who were raised by her their whole lives, you know, they're only 18, so they're still figuring it out, but you know, they work an average job, which is fine. Like, you know, it's just not, it's not for me at least. It's just not. And I'm not here to say like, oh, if you work an average job, you suck and you should figure it out. No, like for a lot of people, that's perfect, right? That's what they want. But for a lot of other people, they just can't do it, man. They just don't have that in them. And that's kind of how I am too. I've worked a lot of shitty jobs I didn't like, and I'm going to keep trying to find something that I do like, you know? Screen printing is it right now, and I hope it is forever, you know? But, you know, right now it's kind of interesting, but I took a lot of my like passion for screen printing directly from Corey from Repset. I don't know if you've I've heard that name in a while, but I had Corey Beal on my show, and he got really into screen printing years ago while doing the Repset stuff. For anybody who doesn't know anything about Repset was a BMX blog page years ago, back when the Come Up was around, and they were rivaling the Come Up, and I think Corey actually wrote a couple articles and whatnot for the Come Up and helped over there. So really big deal, you know? And he got into screen printing with that. Well, now he owns one of the most well-respected screen printing companies in all of Canada. Floodway is always doing a lot of really cool stuff. He is passionate about screen printing. He's always doing videos on different techniques that you can use or different things to improve your shop and whatnot. And really, really knowledgeable guy as well. He did my first round of shirts that we released a couple of years ago too. So
nice.
Yeah, really good guy.
Yeah, I actually, I got quotes from him once for some clothing, and it was very professional.
Yeah.
Very quick response and good to work with. I don't think we ended up going with him, but really good overall
really,
experience.
really
so big shout out to that guy. And
yeah.
Before that too, he was a really good bike rider, right? Like he was putting out real street videos.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much an OG Canadian BMX rider.
Yeah, he's a part of Foo. Like that's a thing as well. He had he was a badge member of BMX Foo. Had his bike stolen, and I don't think he's gotten a badge since. But yeah, I mean, the dude has been in the industry for a long time as well, and he kind of was able to take a avenue of BMX riding where he's making shirts and whatnot. And do that, right? And even years ago when I was doing my first BMX video, my dad and I made the shirts in the basement. And when I say my dad and I basically mean he printed them all and I sat there with a heat gun trying to figure it out. But, you know, at the time I just didn't have the attention span to even want to learn. I was just like, oh, no, I gotta do this. And now it's like, I see the value in it, right? And it's become a good, like, big passion of mine. I just printed the shirts for his tattoo shop actually, and I do a lot of stuff for like craft breweries and whatnot as well, which is another thing I enjoy. So yeah, it's pretty rewarding in some way.
Definitely. There's a lot of entrepreneurs and people with cool businesses. I'm sure you probably even get to see like, whoa, there's more people with businesses than I even thought. Like, you probably see just businesses.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it's really cool.
And anytime you see like a little business or any business, or does it spark your head like, oh, I kind of want to go talk to them. Hey, if you need shirts or.
Yeah, definitely. You know, at the moment I'm still more of just the production side of things where I just focus on making the actual product and whatnot. But there is definitely some talk with the company that I'm with currently that, you know, potentially in the future, maybe that'll be something where I will help out with that. No promises, obviously, but you know, I'd love to see something like that. But
that's awesome that you're doing something that you enjoy and that you're stoked on.
I think so.
And you still have time to ride your bike and
lots.
Hang out with your fiance and do podcasts.
Well, I mean, podcasting's been a little tough the last 6 months. I haven't released anything, but a lot of that just comes from burnout. You know, I did over 100 episodes, and throughout that, you know, I got to talk to some of my biggest heroes ever, and a lot of them I still keep in good contact with, which is really awesome. And I think a big thing with that is just that I've tried so hard and I worked so hard just on that, and I've kind of always been this way that if I'm going to do something, it has to be 100%. I have to be into it. A lot of the times it actually damages any other part of my life just because I focus solely on one thing, right? You know, when I was like fully 100% ingrained in my podcast, I was real broke. You know, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have anything, but I was really focused and passionate about it. And obviously, you know, I've got to figure stuff out, and I am going to come back. I don't want to say that I'm not, but I will be coming back at some point, and I have an idea on how to refresh the show, which I'm really excited to do. And I think a big thing for me too is that I've talked to pretty much everybody that I wanted to talk to. You know, I've done I think 104 episodes now, like mainline episodes, and there was some side stuff that we did as well, but there's some people that I want to start bringing into it a little bit more. There's guests who, have different things to offer than just BMX. There's a guest in mind that I really want to actually ask, and he'll be my first episode back, and he is super passionate about live music. So I'm really hoping that we can get him on. He does a lot of live recording and whatnot. So who knows? Maybe we'll see an episode with him in a couple weeks. Maybe not. That's always kind of tough. But I definitely want to get back into it because it's been too long, and it's nice to just the ego part of me, hearing myself is fucking awesome, eh?
Yeah, it must. I mean, it's probably not, it's nice to take a break from anything too. And 100 episodes. Yeah. I mean, 100. That's over 100 hours. That could be up to 300-400 hours or more.
Yeah, most of my episodes are a minimum of 3 hours. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and everybody that I've had on my show has been a great guest, which is awesome, at least in my opinion. There's a lot of people in there that, people may have never heard of. There was a guy recently, his name's Akram. He's from the United Arab Emirates, and this kid is fucking wild, dude. Such a gnarly BMX rider. But what got my attention was at one point I saw a clip of him climbing up this huge bridge in Dubai. He goes right to the top, and just Grand Theft Auto, he fucking drops in on this bridge and rides down the side of this insanely huge bridge on his bike. Gets in a ton of legal trouble because he's just climbed the biggest bridge in Dubai, basically, and rode down the side support of it. And it is the most wild BMX clip ever. And there's no trick. It's only the spot, And that's a big thing, I think, is that riding, I've really turned this into my way of riding now, where a lot of it is just the spot, If you can get something cool in a full pipe where you're just carving through, maybe hit your pegs a couple times, that's way fucking cooler to me. And that was a big deal for me. Was I really want to chat with this guy because this is all spot. The only thing that he did was just ride straight down on a brakeless BMX bike. And it's the fucking most wild clip ever, dude. And the story behind it, we chatted about it. Just that alone, I think, was a 45-minute start to end story of just him telling us about every little detail, which is incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a really, really good guest. I think he was really underrated too. I go back and look at the stats quite a lot. And he was one of those ones where I was really, really hopeful that people would listen and really enjoy. But, a lot of it is people just don't have the time to go and find something new. Maybe they just want to listen to their favorite pro tell a story, right? They want to hear something familiar instead.
The internet's weird with that too, where just sometimes, for Instagram clips, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. The clip you put the most attempts into, the one that you're most stoked on, you think it's your best clip, ends up getting the least amount of views. And then you do a clip that, I'll just film this random thing. It takes one try. It's not hard for you. All of a sudden it goes viral. And
right.
You're like, wow, it's just so strange what sometimes gets views and what doesn't. It's so strange. But dude, that's a big shout out to you and the podcast, and thanks for having me on, and thanks for helping me so much with this podcast. For people that don't know, you've been the guy that I've basically been asking way too many questions to, just trying to figure out how this all works, and you've been so helpful, and dude, thank you so much.
Of course, I appreciate it. I really don't mind. It's nice to have more people in BMX podcasting. It kind of takes a little bit of the weight off my shoulders in a way, because I really wanted people to have a good show to listen to, right? And now there's so many out there. I'm not saying that I was the biggest thing in the world, but I feel like I had a really good fan base of dedicated people who wanted to listen to find out more knowledge within BMX. And I think the more that we have people talking about it, the better. Right?
You were early on too. You got into it early.
Definitely, I think I was, Unclicked had just kind of started back up around then. And, I don't really count the first 15 episodes of my show because they're just kind of nothing. It's just me figuring stuff out. But I had on a lot of the people that I really wanted to talk to, which is awesome. And I've made a lot of friends throughout that as well, other BMX podcasters. Matt Smith is incredible. He runs Different Spokes. And then Brent Moore, obviously his YouTube channel on BMX riding is just super cool, super knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
Very nerdy when it comes to BMX. He's got such an interesting riding style too. But yeah, and then there's other people in there as well. I don't want to like miss anybody, but yeah, there's quite a few.
Well, it's cool that because obviously when we're growing up, our biggest influences in BMX, I would assume for you too, is like pro riders, people, our idols, the people we look up to. But now the fact that you have these other influences in BMX for certain avenues and things you can do in it, like you're talking about these guys who have podcasts and YouTube channels and how they inspire you to do stuff. It's cool that it's not just like, oh, the trick they did is inspiring. It's like what they're creating with their YouTube page and their podcast, and that's also inspiring. And it's cool. Like we're at an age now where it's not just about riding. It's about being in this sport for more than just being on the bike. And it feels cool to be in it for other reasons, doing kind of actually trying to pursue other avenues of the sport. It's fun.
No, absolutely. I think a big thing too is that with BMX and like your influence in it, I think a lot of people owe their influence not to just the riders, but the magazines and everything that brought you those riders, right? And in a way, that was kind of my goal with my podcast was, hey, I want to be able to have people listen to something instead of having to read it, right? BMX magazines are virtually gone. Dig is doing their thing every year, and that's awesome, but it would be cool to still have something out there. But until then, podcasts is a good way for people to kind of hear about their favorite BMX riders, right? Or hear better backstories with more in-depth stuff to it too. Because at the end of the day, in a magazine, you can only have so many pages, right? Things have to be cut out. Whereas with a podcast, you can get 3 hours of just specific content from one rider talking about all the different clips, right? So you're kind of meeting everybody's needs in a way. And I think that was like my main thing was I don't want to influence people with my riding. I want to influence people with my podcasting or my visions within BMX, right? And for years, that's all I wanted to do was be a pro, but it's just not, like it wasn't, an option for me. I wasn't that great of a rider. I've done some pretty gnarly things, but I think that if I had like the option to do either, I think 10 times over, I would still stick with podcasting because it's been the most rewarding experience in my life. Like just meeting all of these different people and whatnot, and hearing everybody's conversations and being so knowledgeable about something that I care about so much, That's
great. And one thing that's really hard with action sports is as a pro, it's very strange because the longer you do it, with a business, with a podcast, with most things that you do, work related or just whatever, you build. Have you ever heard the expression evergreen effect? I think, or the evergreen effect, I think it is. It's basically like how when you build a business, you build your website and then you just have it built. So like you're building this foundation that you don't have to recreate. Once you build it once, you have it, it's built. Where like as a professional athlete, it's like the longer you do it, you'll eventually start going down. It's like everything that you built comes back down,
right?
Which is very strange because in most other things, it's not how it works. The longer you do it, even as a musician, maybe at one age you kind of deteriorate, but you see 80-year-olds fucking fiddling up a storm on the violin or whatever, and you're like, wow, like that's something you can keep doing as you get older and get better and better at. And unfortunately, if you're a BMX rider at some point in your 30 to 40s, 50s, you're going to start
I know dudes in their 60s that are still riding, but, maybe they don't hit up a bowl or ride street quite as much. Maybe they're just riding some tabletop dirt jumps, stuff like that, right?
Like when you're 60, you're going to be able to tattoo, right? Like you're going to be a full-on artist at 60. Like that's wonderful. Like that's so cool.
Also the same level of like, this is on my mind a lot because it's like there's no retirement plan in tattooing. So it's like I don't want to be still tattooing when I shouldn't be, like my eyesight's gone and I'm shaky and when it's bad. I don't want to be relying on like, I still gotta go to work and do bad tattoos. Like,
right.
you know, I don't want to, you know, it's not like you get past your prime, but you want to be able to build something so that you don't have to be stuck in that position either.
Right.
But I'll still be skateboarding at 60 for sure. And it's like the things that, and this is something that I find is that as you get older, it's less important to land all those tricks. You know, we were talking about that earlier. It's like, for me, the most fun about skateboarding, you know, usually I'll skate from my shop to the skate park, and that's like a 20-minute ride. And I usually get what I need from skateboarding before I even get to the park. You know, it's like the pushing and like, you know, feeling the pavement under your, you know, your ollie manholes and stuff on the way. And to me, that's way more fun than any of the other stuff. Once you get there, it's nice to like, you know, to land tricks, but it's like also if you don't, it doesn't matter because, you know, and I'm sure it's the same for BMX, right? It's just, there's something about just like paddling around and just like that. That's like the most fun that you can get out of it anyway. So like, you know, it goes back to what you fell in love with in the first place, which isn't, you know, like doing thousands of hard tricks. You know, what you fell in love with is that like, that you can just like, you know, ride the freedom maybe that you get from it, right? The like, at least that's what I find with skateboarding is that freedom of just being able to ride and ollie over some things, do some manis, and like, you know, that I get what I need from skateboarding before I ever get to the park. So I feel like when I get older, it's like there's always going to be that. You're always going to be able to push.
That's awesome that you figured that out, because I feel like that's something that maybe a lot of people actually don't find a peaceful partnership with their a passion like BMX or skateboarding, and it kind of just draws them to stop doing it, and then all of a sudden they haven't done it for 5 years. They watch their friend's video and they're like, fuck, I wish I still skated, but now they've quit. And
well, a lot of my friends have kind of like because they were trying too hard and then they got injured and then they haven't been able to get back into it, you know. And so it's kind of like maybe that's the blessing I had, is I was never that good. And so it's like, you know, and I know when to bail. Like, I'm not going to commit, you know, I'm out. It's easy. And that's what I think is different between biking and skateboarding, is I always thought that with you, is that like, if I just want to bail out, I just bail out, you know. But like, if you have a bike, you got a fucking bike underneath you. So it's a lot harder to bail out. So there's a lot more commitment, I guess. But like,
it's crazy. For me, I feel like so much of what I look up to now, like it's definitely evolved and changed over time. And now it's like the people who, I'm just going to name drop Dennis Anderson. Like when I watch the fact, like he's one of the best bike riders ever.
He is sorry to interrupt, he is the best bike rider ever. And like that's not saying anything towards Garrett or anybody else, but if you look at all around BMX riding, Dennis is the best ever. I don't know if you saw his most recent video, but who the fuck goes to a ditch in, you know, LA somewhere, sets up a kicker ramp and does a flip whip step down into it? Fucking nobody. That's like the wildest shit in the world, man.
Yeah.
Like unreal.
Absolutely massive and unreal. And but what I think I look up to the most is his attitude. Like I've been on Haro trips and I've seen him walk away from a clip. Like, you believe it or not, like Dennis Anderson, there are certain times where the clip isn't working, and I've never seen someone who's so good at just walking away. Fuck it. Like, whatever, it's not working. Where, like, you know, for most people, it's not like that. It turns into this demon that's in their brain, and if they don't land that trick, if they don't get it, it's a bad day, and there's a lot of bad that's going to come from it. They can't just shrug it off. And for me, like, that's, as someone who was like that, you know, and I think that's a lot of the mentality that makes people so good, is being so hard on yourself that you're like, fuck you, like you get that clip and that's what makes you good, but that also can ruin you. And for me, like, I just want to be consistent with my mentality and like my happiness and with people around me. So the people that I look up to the most are the people that I've seen be the most consistent, like, you know, Nyquist, Dennis, like these people who I've never seen them like treat anyone really that bad or like lash out or freak out. Like they're just so consistent, and you know that they're working for that. It's not easy for anyone. It's hard work and, you know, and strength, mental strength to be able to do that. So for me, like, that is such a big part of like who I look up to nowadays too in BMX, is like people who can, and when you're doing something really scary, that's when fear is the thing that really makes you mad, because you're scared, and there's like a fear and anger is like, they're like cousins, you know, like they come together, and but there's a higher level where like you believe in yourself and you say, I got this, and you're just confident, and you're not like and that, like, and people have figured that level out. It's a higher level in my opinion, because I was like that before, where I used anger and fear to get myself to fucking do it, and I found this higher level where it's like, no, if you're just really confident, if you really believe in yourself, throw the superstition out. Like, there is a way to do it that's like this professional way. And
Definitely, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Like, over the years, obviously, things become a little bit different, where the way that I used to ride a few years ago was very, like, let's find the biggest thing and just jump it, you know? Like, I took you to that rail hop I did in town. I remember taking my dad to that rail hop and being like, I'm going to jump this. And him being like, oh, I don't know, it's probably not a good idea. And then one day just fucking came home, showed him the clip, and he was stoked. But just shit like that, where it's like, that was my style of riding, was just find the biggest thing that scares the shit out of you and just do it, you know, just send it. And I've had a lot of bad crashes because of that, and I kind of see it in a weird way now, where years and years have gone by since I've had some like pretty bad head injuries. And sometimes even when I'm talking, I can tell that, like, you know, my words don't come to me the same way as they do in my head or stuff like that. And that's just kind of, I think that's partially from that. And you kind of have to, it's hard to like figure out, like even right now, like I'm having a hard time with this, but yeah, I think it's, you kind of have to weigh your options, right? And if you are going to do it, you need to go into it with more confidence. Like now, the stuff that I like to do on a bike, I do with full confidence, knowing like, I got this, you know? Whereas beforehand, a lot of it was, I don't know, but I'm going to fucking do it. I'm going to hold on, you know? There's nothing wrong with doing that a couple times, but, you know, really weigh your options first, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like ego.
Yeah,
I think we were talking about that earlier too, where it's like, I used to want to be the best, you know, I go to the park, I want to be the best, and now it's like I don't care. It's like you don't have to be the best, and like first of all, it's a sucker's game, because there's always somebody younger, better than you coming up, so you're never you're not gonna be the best for long, you know. But so now I just want to go to the park and have fun and skate, you know. And
not caring doesn't mean that you don't want to land the trick. It doesn't mean you're gonna go there and not like fucking shred. Like you're there to shred.
Yeah.
But like if you don't land it, like you're not like, oh my god, like fuck, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, but I just look at it like I'll get it another day. You know, I'm like, I'll come back and I'll get it. You know, because that's usually what happens. Is like I will obsess over something and I'll do it 300 times and not get it. Then you go back the next day and you got it the third try.
Right.
And you're like, oh, it's like, because usually it's funny because it's like this weird thing happens where you're training yourself as you're doing it. And like, you know, maybe you get 3 steps down the road in the wrong direction, you know, like your foot's in the wrong spot every time. And now you've trained your body to put your foot in the wrong spot. So the board doesn't want to flip the way you want it to flip, which I'm not sure how that works with bikes, but it might be the same thing. But it's like, so I just find like, you know, if you almost have to take that break and kind of like go back, you know, rewind a bit to like, you know, what's not working about this, what is working. But when you're obsessing over it, you're like, it's funny how sometimes I'll obsess over something, I can't get it, and every little micro thing was my shoulder too far forward, is it too far back, is this working, is that working? Mm-hmm. And then like you'll book it towards the ledge, and some kid on a scooter cuts in front of you, just in time where you're like, no, it's not fucking you up, but it's kind of like, but then it shuts your brain off from that thinking, and then you just pop the trick, and then you land the trick, and you're like, oh. Because you're not overthinking like, okay, is my foot in the exact spot it has to be? Is this exactly where it has to be? But yeah, I don't know. Anyhow, it's like the ego of just like being like, you know, it doesn't matter. Like I'll get it tomorrow, and like no one really cares if you get it or not, you know. But people are stoked when you do. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like anybody's
Yeah. It's usually
yeah.
yourself that's like wants it more than anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's wild how it works, man. And I think the other thing that makes it so hard is that it's an all or nothing. Like you can put 300 tries into a clip, and if you don't land it, you have nothing usable. It kind of goes back to the evergreen effect of like it's an all or nothing. Like it's not like those 300 tries are accumulating to something. It's like you either get the clip or you don't. But obviously at this stage of life, there's more to doing the clip than getting just the clip. Like you're I got to work out, there's a lot of other things, aspects that,
and I'm like, it's not my job, so I'm like, I don't have to care that much. Like I don't do it for a job. I'm like, this is what I do for fun. So it's like when it stops being fun, you're like, well, what am I doing it for then? Because I don't do it for, it's like it's just for fun. So I don't have to worry about it being a job,
And I feel like, and crazy enough, the people that do it for a job the best, I would assume, are the ones who know how to have the most fun doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is crazy. Like,
but also to circle back to that one extra point is that my job means that, what I do for a job, I have to be perfect at. I can't have mistakes doing tattooing. So it's like, it is kind of nice when you can do something where you're like, I don't have to be perfect at this, like if I don't land it, I don't land it. It's kind of nice where it's like, I can put all that, and you have to be perfect in this aspect of your life, but not everywhere else, which is kind of a good way to, I don't know. I don't know if that means anything, but to me that kind of feels like there's a little bit of that in there too.
For sure. I mean, I guess especially since tattooing, it's not like a clip you're doing for yourself. It's a piece of art you're doing for someone else's skin that's going to be there forever. Like that's got to be some pressure there, right? Like,
yeah, and it's also a part of like, I admitted a long time ago that it's not for me. It's like I mean, it's for me, but it's like the art I'm making is for that person. It's not the art that I'm making for myself. So I paint a lot because that's the art for me, where I get to express myself here. I'm expressing someone else's ideas on their body because that's their tattoo. As far as like, I know a lot of tattooers that are kind of a little more in that vein of like, well, this is my art and this is what I'm doing. But it's like, I kind of feel like that's pretty narcissistic to put your stuff on everybody else, because like maybe they don't like that, maybe they don't want that. So so I always feel like I want to work really close with people and get what they want.
So with that said, like I'm assuming you have a certain style of art though, right? Like I guess, does everyone kind of have a style?
I would say probably, but like it's one of these things where I wouldn't say it's, people would look at it and they can tell it's what I did. Let's put it that way. But I came into it in a time when you had to be able to do everything. So you couldn't just specialize and go, I only do black and gray, or I only do this.
Right.
When I got into it, you had to be able to do everything. So, but I definitely feel like I do a lot of color work and a lot of like pretty recognizable color work, and it kind of leans towards paintings. Like it's more like realism, like more paint, like softer, I guess is kind of the weird term, but it's like it doesn't have big thick outlines. It's a lot more like a painting, so it's kind of. And I think that it just kind of evolved in that direction over the time, but yeah.
Tattoos have gotten huge, Like the industry is blown up, like from 20, 30 years ago, I'm guessing. Seems everyone has tattoos now, and back then it was like kind of...
It was always busy, but it's like now it's like all the soccer moms have it and everybody else has it, And the weird thing is that it's become like people get trendy sleeves. It used to be someone would get like a tramp stamp on their lower back, and it's embarrassing and it's cringy now, like 30 years later, but now it's like people get that within a sleeve form, so they're walking around with their lion, and it's like roses and lions and clock faces. You're like, wow, that's like a pretty cringy tattoo now, 5 years later,
But like still like socially acceptable, maybe, where like back then, like people would probably see, tattoo, like bad guy or criminal or whatever. And
I used to think if you saw somebody with a sleeve, they did tattoos, and it's like, and I always tell people, like, once Justin Bieber got sleeves, they're like, well, it's no longer for badasses, like it's out, now you got to put it on your face, and not, even if it's on your face, you're a badass. It's just like, man, it's like.
That's funny. He is a badass though.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber's a bit of a badass.
Maybe he did. Like, I think that he's done some crazy shit. I don't know enough. I couldn't. I couldn't, if you played me music, I couldn't tell you what music is his music, but it's like, that's generational, right? Like,
You're a musician too, right?
a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I play a lot of guitar. I shouldn't say a little bit, but yeah, I do play guitar from time to time.
Nice.
Love it. I mean, it's like an obsessed, but the same thing, obsessive, right? So, but then it's like, it's these weird things where I'm like, I can't just play a song. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to write songs. So I start like, okay, I'm going to write down lyrics. I'm going to start making songs, and start building, because it's that same artist part of you, right? Where it's like, I don't want to just copy someone else's song. So, yeah.
That's
and
cool.
Maybe starting a punk band this summer. I don't know. It's like, I was talking to like a client of mine who plays drums, and we were watching some old NoFX stuff. So I'm like, oh, maybe we should do a punk band. Why not? It could be fun, like, why not? So I think that's the big thing, is the why not lifestyle. I think that was a big thing with when you started the podcast, is that there's a lot of, you had certain friends in your life that were kind of like, why bother?
Yeah.
And it's like, but you need to surround yourself with the why not people, because it's like, why not? And look what happened. It's like, why not? And then you get to talk to all your pros, like all the people you want to talk to. And yeah, maybe, if you went into it with like, oh, I'm going to do this so I can make a bunch of money, it's like, well, then you probably wouldn't talk to those people that you want to talk to. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of one of those things that, like, you do it because you're passionate about it. And then somewhere along the line, somehow you started talking to like these big name pros that you really looked up to, and you wouldn't have had those conversations without it, so it's kind of cool too.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was a lot of like, I wanted to see more stuff within BMX where, we had interviews with people. And also, I just wanted to learn more about BMX in a different way, right? Like, I have never really been somebody that reads a lot. So, if I did read, it was BMX magazines. But just podcasting in general, I listen to probably 8 hours of podcasts a day already. Like, I'm really into podcasting. I really, really enjoy it. But yeah. There you go.
That's what's cool. That is cool though, that, like, you're a passionate BMXer, but I feel the same way. Like, I really enjoy listening to podcasts. I spend a lot of time, just like a lot of the times I'd rather have a podcast on than a movie or a TV show or even music, just because it makes me feel very comfortable, and I love being able to just learn at the same, and the fact that you only need your ears for it, like, you can still watch it, but the fact that you can like work and listen to a podcast, and it's crazy how it's a new thing, because
it's endless knowledge too, right? And like, a big thing for me is with ADHD as well. Like, I need to be doing two things at once. Like, even when I was making my podcast, if I was writing questions and whatnot, I would be either watching BMX stuff of that person or listening to a different podcast of that person, which would always be helpful of like, oh, they've already answered this question, right? But on top of that, just like having a brain that can function with two different things going on at once, podcasts are the best thing, right? It just works so well for me. And I would assume same thing for you in a way, right? Like you mentioned earlier, you're really into podcasts, even just to sit down and watch them. And that's something where maybe if you're not a super social person, you have a podcast that you listen to all the time, and you kind of feel like, oh, you know what? Like, this is a like weird kind of scenario where I do listen to this person. We're not friends by any means, but it's like, it's still somebody within your life in this weird kind of way.
Yeah, it's like you're hanging out with them.
Yeah.
Like, you're listening to a podcast and watching it, and you're almost hanging out with the people in the podcast.
It's a way of like being social but antisocial at the same time, right? Like, you can still listen and like whatnot, and obviously like most of the podcasts I listen to are literally just comedy podcasts about nothing. Like, it's just something to make me laugh and something to keep my mind off things, right? And there are a few that I listen to that are all like super knowledgeable about certain things. There's one that I want to give a shout out to. It's called Unscripted Moments. It's a podcast about the band Propagandhi, which is one of my favorite punk bands ever. But this podcast is like kind of how I want to start to format my show moving on, is they sit down every week and they break down one song with different artists for 3 to 4 hours. So they get super into the lyrics and what they mean and why,
Cool.
Chris would have wrote these lyrics and whatnot. And that's kind of what I want to start to do with my show, but more in depth with like BMX moments instead of BMX riders. So instead of just talking to the rider about a moment, maybe he would end off that episode. But before that, we would have different riders that had been influenced by that moment within BMX. So yeah, when I do come back, that'll probably be what the show will be formatted like.
Like one of Ruben's famous clips
Yeah,
or something like
the,
that.
The whale tail clip where he goes from the bank onto that whale tail over the steps. That would be something where I would maybe call up a few of the people that were there. They tell their side of the story. Maybe there's moments in there that people wouldn't have thought about, right? What was the trip like to that spot, right? How was Ruben feeling that morning? And instead of just getting it from his perspective, getting it from the people who maybe filmed it or the people who were stopping traffic and whatnot, just to really break it down and get into certain moments or events within BMX. I had a listener reach out a while ago and ask about, you should do some more stuff with the Western Canada BMX. You'd focus a lot on like Middle Canada and Eastern Canada, but I'd love to see more West stuff. And you know what? That's like something that I've really been trying to take into account as well, is because there is a lot of talented riders from all over, and I do tend to just find people locally or way out where it's a FaceTime call. So yeah, I've got a couple ideas for when I come back, but
I do wonder if this whole podcasting thing, like for the fact that you, me, I'm sure a lot of other people around our age are really into them, if it has something to do with just our lifestyle and our attention span in this time, like how the time that we grew up in, like even like with like the pandemic and kind of like not hanging out with people as much and maybe working at home more and like having a background noise, like
right.
It just seems like something that came around at the perfect time, and it's like the perfect thing for people like us to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even before COVID or anything like that, I had been listening to lots of podcasts, right? Anytime that I would be riding to somewhere, I'd be listening to a podcast, right? Or if I'm doing anything that involves me where I can just listen to something, I'm pretty much always listening to either music or a podcast, just because, again, like I said, it just helps me kind of stay focused in a weird way. But I don't know, I feel like maybe from that, people have started to kind of get into it a little bit more.
Oh yeah, it's blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, yeah, definitely. The influence is strong, definitely. But yeah. Were podcasts around when you were in your 20s, or is it?
No.
I guess like cell phones weren't even.
There was no internet. Think about that for a hot minute. I remember, like, the internet kind of was dial up in the 90s, maybe. So like, but you couldn't do anything. Not everybody had a website. And like I remember when we got a computer at the tattoo shop, and I was like, what is the point of having a computer here? Like, what's the point?
Wow.
And then eventually I started being able to draw things quicker on the computer than I could on paper. But like for the most part, I was like, I'll just draw it on paper. Like, why would I draw it on computer? Like now it's like I draw digitally everything. But
is it those pads where you have like a pen and you can draw right on the pad? Is that how you do it?
It's called a Surface Studio. So it's like a giant monitor that like folds it down and you draw on top of. But a lot of people, everybody draws like on an iPad or something like that now. But back in those days, just having a computer, I was like, what is the point of this at the tattoo shop? Because you'd scan stuff and then maybe use it in Photoshop to kind of mess with it. But back then, there was no podcast, there was none of that stuff.
So what did you?
Radio shows, though, right? That's kind of like how podcasting started. Was you're gonna have a radio show, but on the internet and isn't interrupted by music or ads or anything, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
So what did you do when you had to make a tattoo? Would you draw it directly onto the stencil paper and then you stick that stuff on and then you peel it off? Is that like the...
No, they have like we had stencil machines. So I grew up at that point we had stencil machines, but you would like draw it on paper, photocopy it, and then run it through a stencil machine. but it's like everything had to happen on paper, and like it's one of those things that like, and at one point I realized, oh, if I'm gonna make something symmetrical, I can just draw half of it and then put it on the computer and flip it, you know, which is like, it sounds crazy to say it now, that's what you would normally do, but back then you had to draw both sides. You're like, okay, I'm gonna flip it on a light table and then draw both sides, but then it's still never 100% the same thing. So it's like, oh, that made a big difference, you know.
Interesting.
But yeah. So those were the times back. But I mean, we soldered our own needles back then, because like you didn't buy pre-made needles, so you bought needles loose. So you buy like 1,000 loose needles and you'd solder them into configurations. So basically, think of it like a paintbrush. It's like every, if I'm doing a tattoo, I'm gonna use probably 6 different needles. So I have a thin one, a thick one, a big fat round one, a couple big fat flat ones. Like if you're gonna paint your wall, you're gonna have a roller, or you're gonna have a small one for doing the edges.
Right.
So that's the same thing with the tattoo, but those are just basically different sizes of needles, so you'd have to solder them together in different forms. So now it's like back in those days. I don't have time to do anything now, so I don't know how I had time. Back then I had no idea how I had the time to actually solder all my needles and then clean them and autoclave them, and then mix your own ink, because they didn't have ink back then. Like there's no tattoo suppliers, so there's like one tattoo supplier or two, maybe 2 big suppliers back then. So you'd buy your ink in a powder and then you'd mix it yourself and keep it on your shelf. It's come a long way since those days.
Cow.
Like it's funny because I buy my ink in like 2-ounce bottles now, because I want to get rid of it as soon as possible, like burn through it. So, but back in those days, you'd make giant 8-ounce bottles and you'd have like a thing of yellow for 2 years, like that kind of thing where you're like, wow, like by today's standards, that's pretty crazy to think about, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's only primary colors back then, or primaries and secondaries, but like now I have like 200 different colors that I'm picking from every day. Where back then you had to mix it all yourself. So you had I have green, I have blue. How do I mix these things together to get a different kind of green or whatever? But
yeah, it's just saturated and it's good though, because I feel like I don't know if saturation's even the right word. It's just kind of like exploded.
Yeah, the good part of it is that the industry has exploded, and with that comes innovation. So now I have one tattoo machine that's wireless, and it runs all 6 different needles instead of having to have 6 different machines. And I don't have to, everything's fully disposable, so I just throw it out afterwards. Where before you had to spend a lot of time cleaning your equipment, autoclaving it, and then reusing it on everybody. So
you'd reuse the same needles?
Not the same needles, the same tubes.
Oh, okay.
So needles were always disposable, but the thing is, the needle doesn't hold a lot of debris. The tube that the needle runs through. So imagine a pen.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the insert is the needle, and the pen part that you hold on to would have to be cleaned and then reused on everybody.
Interesting.
Back in those days, and so if you don't clean that properly and autoclave it properly, it's that can be a big problem. So it's kind of funny because now that everything is disposable, that kind of eliminates a lot of that stuff too. But then on the same level, you're throwing at so much stuff. And it's wow, there's a lot of waste that comes from this. The industry's exploded, but on the same level, there's a lot of waste that comes with that. So I kind of wonder too. I'm like, man, there's got to be a better way than what we're doing. Something that's sustainable. I don't know what sustainable looks like, because all that stuff just gets tossed in a sharps container and then incinerated anyways. But yeah.
So is there a specific thing where you throw the needles though, and then there's a needle return where is there a company that takes old needles and does something with them?
Yeah, they incinerate them.
Oh, so they don't recycle?
No.
Incinerate, does that mean melt down and then redo? Yeah. Oh, so that's cool.
Well,
so it is getting...
Well, I don't know if it's a blast furnace or what they do with it, but all that stuff gets incinerated and probably disposed. Let's hope it gets disposed of. It's medical waste. All medical waste goes to the same place. So
can't imagine how much medical waste there is, man. It's probably
so it's on a certain level. It's very. It's kind of especially when you see every time you turn around, there's a new tattoo shop and people are making more people. So the industry is exploded in that way, and it's good for innovation on some levels, but also some levels it's wow, it's made it too easy for people. Especially with Procreate, it's really easy it used to be if you walked into a tattoo shop and they sucked, you could tell right away because it looked like scum and it wasn't clean. And now it's the shops look clean, but and the art they show you looks good, but the art looks good because it was done on Procreate on a computer, and they probably used they use reference they stole from Google, and so
Right.
it's like, you know, like they can't. It's like, can they reproduce it? You know, like sure, you can copy paste stuff on Photoshop, but can you reproduce it in a tattoo? And that becomes a big problem because a lot of people can't, you know.
Yeah.
And so like you're selling them on this one idea, but they're, you know, so you have people that are, you know, it's really, I think it's harder on some levels, you know, to find a good tattoo artist, because unless you look at all their work and then like how much of their work is actually their work, you know, because like there's ethical things, like as far as like we don't use filters. Most professional tattooers don't use filters and stuff on their pictures, because I want you to look at the tattoo that I've done as it is, you know, because if I'm selling, you know, because there's guys out there that will take their pictures into Photoshop and then like add more whites or add more highlights, and if you don't do that, then, you know, anyhow, it's kind of one of those things that like you're selling them on something they're actually not getting. So I think that you have to be cautious. That's for sure.
Like just from the one beer, I'm like, whew, I'm gonna lose my thought if I do any of these.
I always have beer on the show because I felt like it kind of helped me relax a little bit, especially when you're talking to like your fucking idol, like, you know, Mike Aiken. When I had Van Homan on, we were both drinking whiskey because he was and I'm like, fuck it, I'll get a bottle down and I guess we'll do that.
Nice.
So it was good though.
So
we were talking about tattooing and kind of like the different processes of things evolving over the years. And I think a good way to transition it back to BMX is just like throughout the guests that I've had, one of the questions that I've always asked about was people's bikes or how things have changed over the years. And it's pretty wild to think about, even in the last, 15 years, right? Because I've only been riding for probably 12 years at this point. And right when I started was when free coasters were first becoming like a thing where people hadn't started riding them yet. This was still in the era of BMX of tiny bars, super low slim seats that were slammed or even zip tied to the frame with no seat post. Yeah, it's wild to think about how things have changed since then, right? Like my first true BMX bike was a decent bike, but it was nothing too crazy. And now if you went out and spent $800 on a new BMX bike, you're getting a pretty good bike, man. Like probably comes with 4 pegs, free coaster, 4-piece bars. You're going to have the trendy tires, like everything. It's kind of cool to see how things progress.
The weight, the geometry, I mean, everything is just almost mastered. Like, it like they've played with the geometry of bikes so much in that time. Oh, this is too long by 0.1 inches. This is too short by 0.1 inches. And everything has just been like kind of honed into and like fine tooth combed.
Yeah, definitely.
Expression would work for that.
Yeah, think about it. We used to have really shitty slim seats, and now we have the Mike Gray seat, the perfect BMX seat.
Hey, now we're talking. Yeah, you need something to really pinch,
Definitely.
The bar spin has just exploded thanks to Ryan Nyquist and Garrett Reynolds, and I do kind of feel like it's one of the most like practical tricks.
Well,
like,
it's the kickflip of BMX. Like that's what it is, right? It's the trick that most people should know how to do. And I mean, you don't do very many kickflips. No. And I don't do any bar spins. So I feel like that kind of worked its way through there somehow. But, I definitely like my tail whips, even if I suck at them. But, yeah, it is like the most versatile BMX trick where if you do a feeble on a rail or pegs on a rail, what's the trick that you're going to do out if you know how to do it? A bar spin. Like pretty much everybody who can bar spin can do it anywhere, right? Yeah. Maybe nowadays, because bikes are so much lighter, there is a lot of people that could just go and do a tail whip out of something instead. But a bar spin is just one of those things that even if you do a 180 off that same rail, you can throw a bar in that. Like not a lot of people are going to be able to do a pegs to 180 whip, right? It's a lot more like muscle and whatnot that you have to kind of work around. Whereas with a bar, it just kind of flows.
And I feel like the no-hander is kind of the second most practical, but it's just never gonna be the bar spin. And I think a big reason why that is like a bar spin. It doesn't matter what the angle. It doesn't matter what angle you film a bar spin from. wherever it's filmed from, like it's a bar spin. It's like,
Yeah.
it would be like if every tuck no-hander was fully extended. But the thing about no-handers is if you film it from the side, you can only see one arm, and it's just so, and it's also just not as cool. It just overall, I just don't know if it's the bar spin. There's something so cool and practical, and the way that you can, I think you can also squeeze it into more things.
Absolutely.
And the fact that like your bike is level, instead of like no-hander, your bike is up. Like there's just a lot of factors, I feel like, but yeah, and it's so much fun. It's such a good trick. I really tried to hone into bar spins a lot more the past like 3 to 5 years, and I'm glad I did, because it's just so practical, like you said.
Yeah, I think on top of that too, the no-hander, you're one of those dudes that actually utilizes that trick to its full potential, right? Like there's a lot of dudes that don't throw that as much as they should, where, you know, I always see clips of you doing fakey no-handers, everything like that, which is fucking wild, man. It's such a cool trick, right? I remember years ago when I used to do that trick, I was always brakeless. And then when I put brakes on, I couldn't do it, man. It was so fucking hard. I would always catch the lever. You know, you're constantly cutting your hand up from it. So I kind of just gave up on it a little bit. I want to get them back, but I used to be able to do fakey tuck no-hander on a quarter pipe, which is like
sick.
Such a fucking sick trick. Now, one of the ones that I want to get back is turn down to fakey on a quarter pipe. I used to do that at All In when I was living there, because the bowl was so mellow that like there was a certain section where you could just pop and you knew you weren't going to start to fly out of it as long as you really pulled, right? But that trick looks so good, especially if you get somebody who can over-click a turn down, which is like, I don't want to talk myself up, but that is like one of my favorite tricks, and I know that I do a good turn down. But if you can do a turn down where your back wheel is over top of the coping and on top of the deck where you're above it, and then you go to fakie, oh, there's nothing better, man. That looks so good, especially in photos. Like, because it is that like, oh shit factor of if you don't get that back, you're really going to eat shit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's just another one of those ones. What are your trick goals for this year? Do you have anything?
No. Well, I mean, I feel like I don't really plan them ahead that much. It's more like if a spot comes up that I'm like, ooh, like this is a cool trick to do. But yeah, as a no-hander guy, like I feel like it happened organically. Like it happened earlier. I did goofy bar spins, and I found that no-handers were more natural for me. I feel like for most people, bar spins come more naturally to them than tuck no-handers. But for some people, no-handers come more naturally than bar spins. Just so happens for me that the no-hander came more natural. And then, like, recently, I've always been a no-hander guy, but I feel like now I just look at it as there's so many tricks that people aren't doing with a no-hander, but they've been done with a bar spin, and there's 20-plus dudes doing those combinations with a bar spin. But there's like 1 to 2 to 3 people doing it, if any, with a no-hander. So like the way for me, just being a no-hander guy, I'm like, oh, well, I'll just try and do this thing I'll take this combo that was done with the bar spin and just try and incorporate the tuck no-hander in the place of the bar spin. And with that perspective that I have now, there's so many tricks that haven't been done with a no-hander. It's mind-blowing because, like, the bar spin, like, I mean, try and think of a combination that hasn't been done with it. And if you can't, impossible. And if you can think of one, like, Garrett is the one dude who's going to, like, spearhead doing it. He's going to do it first and open that door, most likely.
Well, he's already done it. That's the difference, right?
He's done
like
it all.
Anything within BMX, you can just look back and be like, oh yeah, Garrett did that, right? There's one clip that I always talk about with Garrett, and I'm sure that like you've seen this clip, but there's a clip of him in Barcelona on the seawall, and he does a down whip right at the top of this thing, and then the clip doesn't end. He starts rolling, and then he starts pedaling, and you're like, oh shit, what's he gonna do? And he does this absolutely insane, massive truck driver down this stair set, and it's his opening clip in Deadline. Now, I don't know how big that stair set is, but that clip was his opening clip. It's nothing crazy to him. You know, all throughout that part is like absolute insane clips. And no one ever talks about that clip where I'm like, why do people care that Stevie did El Toro when this truck driver looks to be bigger, right? I don't know how many stairs that was.
Had to be over 20, right?
Yeah, El Toro is El Toro. You know, it has that factor of like, that is the spot, you know? But just the fact that Garrett did those 2 fucking tricks in that line is insane, dude. He's so good on a bike. Like, it's hard to even compare with him, right? Like, even when I was talking about Dennis a couple minutes ago, Dennis is the best all-around rider, in my opinion. Garrett is the best street rider, right? Like, there's just no one better. Like,
yeah,
he's wild.
And especially when you hear like the top guys, they're like, they all feel that way too. And
yeah,
and it's for good reason. They get to see it over and over, and we all get to see it at every contest, at every video. And like you were saying, deadline, like that would be most people's video banger, and it was the opener. And I mean, it definitely could have used a second angle from the bottom. I wish we could see and count the stairs on that. It looks like it's at least like 20.
It's at least
stairs.
a 20. Yeah, it's huge. It's ridiculous.
And like El Toro's a 20, but it's like the smallest 20 you could possibly find.
Right.
Like, not that it's small. It's got a really bad landing, like a hard impact.
Uphill, yeah.
But it's the smallest 20 stair you could find. Like, the stairs are smaller than normal. A normal 20 is definitely bigger than El Toro, which I think is part of why it was so iconic for many other reasons.
To kind of go off that topic, I got a question for you, because being a pro, you've been all over the place. Now, years ago, when I was a dumb 15 or 16-year-old, we had heard a rumor that Canadian handrails were harder than U.S. handrails because the U.S. ones are actually shorter than Canadian ones by the
building code.
Yeah, the building code.
Yeah.
Now, is that true?
Oh, definitely. Especially
Interesting.
I mean, I'm not going to say that I've looked into the California building code or the Ontario building code.
Right.
I'm not going to lie, but I mean, it would appear that way because in California, I think the other reason why they have so many lower rails is because so many people in America sue people. So anywhere there's 1 stair, 2 stair, anything, they just put a handrail just to save their ass.
Right.
So like there's all these weird little rails that they just put everywhere. I think that also has something to do with it, but it does also seem that the building code permits a lower handrail, where here it seems like in general they're 4 to 6 inches taller.
Yeah.
Like, no joke. Like,
no, I mean, that's like what I heard. I feel like when I met Aaron Ross years ago that we like asked him that and he was like fully on board with that. Maybe I'm just making that up, but I specifically remember like having this conversation with my friends about how Canadian handrails, if you can do a Canadian one, you're a true BMX rider, because people in the States have shorter rails, which like, I don't know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But if you look at the skate videos over the years, you would see those picnic benches that they have in California, and those things are tiny, right? You would see all these incredible clips of these skaters who absolutely kill these picnic tables, but they're half the size of a normal picnic table, right? So I feel like it's kind of similar in that sense.
Yeah, I think for the picnic table thing too, like those are just at schools.
Yeah,
and like
they're meant for kids.
Yeah, they're meant for kids, and we don't have like, we don't really have like movable picnic tables that we put at schools. But I think the other thing is that we have low rails here, but they're a little more few and far between. You have to hunt for them. But I think that also just has to do with maybe the size of the cities, the amount of industrial development there is in America. I mean, it's fucking endless. Like, it's so developed that there's just so many spots and rails. And here, maybe because Canada's a little newer, we haven't been developed. But like, if you're in Toronto, like, you have to drive around a bit. But like, we do have the low rails. It's just they're a little more spread out.
The thing about those low rails, though, is that they're not sticking around for long, man. The biggest handrail I ever did was a 24 stair, but the rail itself was like fairly short. You still had to hop onto it, obviously, but it was, considerably shorter than most. It was at a elementary school, and that's probably why, right? they ripped that rail out because they needed to. It wasn't up to code now, and they had to put in a whole new stair set. So they did a double set with a really gnarly kinker that's like, maybe if you were a snowboarder, you would jump to the second rail, but like otherwise no one's touching that set. It's insane. But yeah, like that's another aspect of that. There's a rail in Kitchener that was everybody's first handrail, you know, and that one's gone now. And it was like the perfect left side handrail because it was short. It was not anything too crazy. It was in an area where you had a lot of run up, a lot of run out. It's gone now too. So that's another one of those shorter rails that's just no longer there. So
California is a crazy place. Like every time I go there, I mean, it's easy to kind of forget too, like how wild the street riding is there.
right.
Like there is so much stuff in California that you just say, like, there's no way the people that built this weren't skateboarders or bike riders. Like they must have had it in mind because there's so much stuff there that is designed, quote unquote, perfectly for us to ride. It's just like you show up at a school in California and it's a skate park. Like you can ride the schools like a skate park. It's like, and there's banks, like all the banks have concrete on them. Like maybe a lot of it is drainage because when the flash flooding and stuff, they have to have like really good drainage. So they concrete all this stuff and build all these banks and these ditches. And
Do you know what's wild? Sort of interrupt or interject there, but I had a really good conversation with the Us Them guys. So, you know, Ryan Howard, Zach Gerber, and Bo. Fucking unreal.
I've been talking
videos,
to Zach
man.
Gerber. I want to get him on.
He'll do it. He's a really good
fired up.
guest. He's a good guest, and the thing about Zach is that he's the anti-pro. You know, he's a pro rider who, at this point, I don't think rides for pretty much anybody, and that means he can speak his mind and let you know how he truly feels. And
Love that,
dude. Zach is like such an interesting guy. For you, Zach is one of the only dudes who will do street flips. He's done front flips over handrails just for fun. You know, he's done like grind to front flip, all this crazy shit. And then outside of that, he is super interested in 3D printing guns. Like that's all I ever see, which is like, dude, he's a true American. Trust me. When he was on my show, we were talking about how at one point he had somebody pull a gun out on him while he was street riding. And he fucking lost it on the person, but not because they pulled a gun out on him, because they fucking were brandishing a weapon, and that's like a huge deal. He's like, listen, if you ever pull that gun out, it's not because you're trying to scare someone. It's because you need to use it. You never pull a gun out unless you have to shoot and fire, and you aim to kill. You don't aim to wound. Like, holy fuck. Like, he is truly an American, you know? But, dude, awesome guy. But they had a really good point that in California, yes, you see all these street riders who go out and ride all this wild shit, right? These guys are from the East Coast. They go out there to go and see all the crazy shit that they have in California. Well, they have just as much grungy and shitty stuff as the East Coast does. But if you're in California and you have all the best spots, why the fuck are you going to go and ride all of that, right? Like there's plenty of spots that you can go and ride that are perfect instead. So yeah, it was just interesting that they made that point because I had always kind of assumed, hey, if you're from the East Coast, you're going to have this kind of grungier style of riding because the stuff that you're riding is crusty and old and shitty. And yeah, that's just not the case. It's just that they have that in California, but if you've got better stuff, why wouldn't you go and ride that, right?
Yeah, like you can kind of have your pick of the litter. You can be more picky. This setup,
There's a better one down the street.
Pass up on it. Yeah, it's so true. And man, and I guess the other thing is the fact that you can ride there all year round. Like while all these other places on the more East Coast or north of California, like for 6 to 8 months, you can't ride it. There's snow, rain, and you can just ride California all the way through that whole season. But that's the thing too, is like there's so many places that have spots like California, like Detroit.
Yeah.
But it's like for 6 months, it's a write-off. So like it's an exclusive thing and you have to strike within like 4 to 5 months. Like there's a small window you have to strike and go and ride that stuff. And I think that's why a lot of these places are not as well known too.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I've got a topic for you because you brought up Detroit, and let me know like if this is not something you want to talk about. That's fine. But Tyler Fernangle, one of the fucking most unreal dudes from a young age in BMX, from Detroit, absolutely kills it. And I always thought, just like that guy was going to be the next Dennis, or the next Garrett. He was really coming up to that. And I mean, maybe I just don't know any better, but I feel like he's kind of like fallen off in a way. And I don't know. Obviously, he was a teammate of yours at one point. How do you feel about his riding lately and whatnot? Is he kind of, I don't know, like I would really love to see him make another comeback with like good stuff because he's such a good rider. From a young age, he was sponsored by Red Bull. I feel like he was really, going for it. And I believe, if I'm correct, he was taken out of school just so that he could pursue being a pro rider. And like, I just feel like I never see him anymore. I don't see a lot of stuff on Instagram or any kind of pro part or anything. I don't know. Like, did you ever have any experiences with him at all?
Oh, yeah. We were, definitely one of my best friends at one point, and roommate, teammate, did everything together. So yeah, I was there through pretty much the whole thing. And yeah, man, it's crazy. Like, he had a gnarly like upbringing in the sense of like he was like put into like moto racing when he was super young, and his dad is a sick dude, but I think he was like kind of hard on him, like you got to get good. And he's also like just genuinely one of the most talented bike riders. Like I've never seen anyone. I've seen most of the top dudes. I've never seen anyone who honestly, like he might be the most talented person I've ever seen. I'm not even kidding.
Wild.
Like I've never seen someone be able to learn and land tricks so quickly. Like just figure out that puzzle as if it's not a puzzle. As if it's just, oh, let me just do this. Like he's so talented. It's mind blowing. But he never had like a normal job. Like he got full sponsorships at 15. Like by the time he was 16, he's
had a Red Bull helmet,
Red Bull, Vans, Haro, Demolition. There's probably 3 more, like Ethica, like and he was on the pro teams. Like he was getting paid by everyone. So like I feel like from kind of, I guess from my perspective, it seems that when he was doing all of his crazy ass videos at 15 and 16, that stuff wasn't that hard for him. I don't know how hard it was for him, but I don't know if it was hard enough to where like maybe he knew, and he was just so young, he didn't even know that he was like, because like for someone to just jump to like pro team at like 15, like, do you know how good the impression you have to make on people, the skill you have to have on the bike, just all around? Like he's one of those guys that would be around people and he would be someone that you could be around for a minute and want to just be friends with, and he would like impact you, like he had that strong influence. Like you meet him and you're like, wow, like this guy's fucking cool. Like, and so I don't know, like I think it's hard when someone is so fucking good at something that people just think that because of that they're supposed to be doing it. And maybe he was always loved biking, but like maybe I think he also had a lot of other interests, and I don't think he really had like a teenagehood. He didn't go to school, high school. He didn't get to like go to parties and make friends. And for me, like that was a big part of my teenagehood. Like I'm really thankful and grateful that I got to go through all that. And when I kind of pursued BMX just after high school. So I still kind of had that high school life. And then I got to kind of branch away from it after experiencing it. And then I got to come back, when I come back home, I hang out with my friends from high school. And I feel like he grew up with like BMX homies. Like all of his homies back home are like BMXers. Like everything is like BMX. And so maybe it's just, he just has other interests, and
You know what? It could be a case of burnout too, right? Because he did do a lot of the most wild shit in BMX from a young age. Like, there's a clip, it's one of his enders, where it's a massive bar spin down this gap where, like, you are topped out, like, fully pedaling as fast as your bike will physically let you. And he toss those bars down that huge stair set, right? There's a lot of memorable clips. And you know what? You make a good point of, like, yeah, he was 15 when he went pro, right? It's in the life cycle of BMX. If you start at an earlier age, I feel like sometimes you kind of retire at an earlier age. Like, obviously he's not retired. He's still a really good rider and whatnot. But I think that maybe in the aspect of, like, he doesn't need that to be his top thing anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Wiz Khalifa quote, the quicker you're here, the faster you go. Like, I think it was just kind of easy for him, like, to get that good. And also, yeah, like, he did get pretty into partying and got some serious girlfriends, and there was a lot of kind of different things pulling him to in other places. And also, if you're like 15, 16, making like really good money, like, he lived in San Diego at like 15 or 16. Like, his parents lived in Detroit. So, like, he was on his own at that age. Like, I think, and I remember there was a Dew Tour Instagram contest where he won 25 G's. It was a fan favorite. So it was voted by the watchers of the viewers of Dew Tour. Anyone could vote. And of all the athletes at Dew Tour, all the different sports, he won.
Wild.
Fan favorite,
Yeah.
25 grand. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong about all this, but I was hanging out with him a lot at this time. And he took that money and he bought his BMW M5. And I feel like right then is where his parents, if they would have just come in and said, you're not buying that car, you need to put that money towards a house, I truly think that would have changed his whole life. Because, like, Dennis, like, I've talked to Dennis about this, and he said, like, when he was 16 or around that age and he was making good money, his dad, Kenny, was like, yo, like, you're going to buy a house. And he's like, I can't buy a house. And he's like, yep, you can, and I'm going to help you. And he helped him through the whole process and, you know, got that foundation for him. And, yeah, so I think San Diego is a crazy place to be 16 and walking around with a Red Bull helmet and an M5 and a bunch of money and a fucking great looking kid, like, and a big fan base. Like, I mean, it's just yeah,
it's interesting, but I didn't want to put a damper on the show in a weird way, because I know you do have a little bit of a relationship with him, but, like, I just wanted to kind of see where he's at these days, because he is just one of those dudes where, like, when I think of Detroit BMX riding, I instantly think about him dropping in on that monument thing. Like, just so fucking wild, dude. That kid was so good. That was such a great cover of Dig, too. That was one of my favorite issues. I remember getting that in the mail and being, like, blown away that this dude, my age at the time, I'm pretty sure we're the same age, was, like, dropping in on this crazy fucking thing. Like, insane.
dude, I remember, I'm pretty sure it was the first year that we got on Haro, because we got on at the same time. We both got sponsored at the same time. And I think it was the first year when we were both at Simple Session in Estonia. And we were at the bar, and Garrett at this time, I didn't know him. I don't think Tyler did. But I remember, like, Tyler was, like, talking to Garrett, and then, like, he came back over and he was like, yo, like, Garrett told me that, like, I basically said, like, he was, like, one of the kids that, like, he thought was, like, you know, one of the sickest kids coming up. Like, this, just the biggest compliment ever. It's so cool. And like, the first time Tyler went to San Diego, Dennis bought the flight for him. He was like, yo, you got to come down here. So, like, Dennis, like, kind of put him on. So, like, that's just a testament to, like, the level that he was on, is that, like, Dennis and Garrett, like, the two goats, were, like, you know, so stoked on him. And obviously that goes down the whole ladder. Everyone was fired up on the kid. He was just something no one had ever seen,
right?
You know?
Yeah, definitely. He, I think that, like, there's a lot of people that do that same thing though, right? Like a good example is Ben Cavanara from Joyride. He was supposed to be little Drew in a way, right?
I think it's Ben Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
Kavanaugh,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'm gonna keep pronouncing his name wrong. That's how I like to say it. So yeah. So
Shout out to Ben because he's still riding. He
still is.
And he's a sick fucking bike rider.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of fun. And
Definitely.
that's what it's about.
Yeah, that is the end of the day, right? But he was always one of those dudes too, where I was like, DK fucking got him early. That's sick, right? Like they really, I could tell, tried to model him after like a little Drew, you know?
I think that was actually Drew modeling
fair enough.
him.
Yeah.
And I wish that kid had more fun influences when he was really into it because I think he kind of just, yeah, I mean, he was so young, like you said, and so good. And I think he just kind of, I think he was also a big gamer. He really liked video games.
Fair.
But I feel like maybe he just didn't have a fun enough influence to be like, let's have fun and like do something fun and ride bikes. And maybe he kind of just got a bad taste in his mouth because he was getting put into this like,
It's a lot of pressure,
onto this
right?
escalator of like, you're going to become a pro. And
Yeah.
he was just like, what? I'm like 12. Like,
Yeah. Just let me ride my bike.
just trying to have fun and ride.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, man. Well, speaking of Drew and Joyride, you were there when Drew did that gap over top, that infamous fucking walkway gap. I believe the clip ends with you throwing your helmet and being like, what the fuck? Dude, that is like the wildest shit in the world to think about, that gap was actually doable and that he did do it. Because it's completely blind. It makes zero sense. And yes, you know, I talked to Drew about it and he broke it down. Yeah, you jump onto the thing a couple times, you do a couple tricks, you start to figure it out, and then you just go a couple cranks faster. But still, holy fuck, dude. That is like the craziest gap ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, insane. What was that like for you? Like, what was the process behind that? Were you there throughout the whole night of him jumping onto that thing?
Yeah, it was it was a cool era, like being part of that. But like I feel like that whole kind of time was like with Drew making crazy joyride videos. The one he did with Charlie, I think he filmed it in a morning.
Yeah.
In one day or something fucked.
So
But the
gnarly.
other ones, like after that, he kind of started like doing these night sessions. So like after the place would close, he would like ride all night. So it'd be like 3 a.m. and he's doing like the biggest things ever. And there was like a select group of us that would get to be there to like hang out and watch it and ride with him. And yeah, we were really close at that time. And I was lucky enough to be like a part of all, like a lot of those nights. And I'll never forget them. Like I just, what I really remember is like being there and I remember seeing some of the things like the bar spin to foot jam on like the sub and then the picnic table on top of the sub and just saying like, this guy is the best bike rider of all time. Like there's never been anything like this. Like this is the craziest stuff ever. Like at the time it was just absolutely mind blowing. So cool that I got to be a part of that. Thinking about that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild, dude. It's pretty wild to look at the
He's
clips
a superhero.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
Like he was a superhero at that time, like for all of us. Like we all looked up to him like as like this like almost like a biking god. Like it was just the shit he was doing. I mean,
dude, it's wild to think about the riders that have come out of that place. Because think about Matt McDuff too, right? Like, who the fuck is gonna throw on heavy metal music, drop into a 90-foot drop in, and try a 40-foot loop? What the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
And he came from down the street, like Joyride. Like he's a local there for years, right? And then quite a few other people, obviously, too, right? Drew, yourself, Brandon Webster.
oh, it's endless, man.
Yeah.
It's absolutely endless. Like what a scene we've been a part of here, you know?
Yeah, I feel so lucky, man. Like Ontario, I definitely think, I mean, obviously you're going to hype up the people you're around. Like at our Muay Thai gym, the only people we hype up are our fucking gym members, you know? Like those dudes fucking kill it. But same thing in BMX, right? I'm going to hype up all the dudes that are locals in Ontario. And like, yeah, there's other riders, other places, but guess what? The fucking people in Ontario are the best, man. They're my fucking people and I love it. Like,
And when you get to see things in person, it's a
Exactly.
whole different impact than online, and that will probably never change. seeing something in person. It's live music. I mean, it doesn't even compare to it's just the impact of seeing something in person is just powerful. And I don't know if that will ever change, except virtual reality might change that.
I hope not.
Same.
I know. I love living in the moment, man. There's no better feeling than being out there with your homies filming a clip, even if I'm behind the camera, I'm still in that moment. I have a really hard time. It was something that for years when I filmed BMX videos, I had the hardest time not freaking the fuck out after somebody landed something that they tried, right? Because you got to wait. I finally figured it out in my second video where it's like, okay, keep filming. After 5 seconds, freak out. Wait till, everything's done. But the second that they land, I can't be screaming behind the camera being like, yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know, just being in those moments, man, I live for that shit.
Oh, yeah. I feel like still, whenever we go out on a weekend and we actually get a crew together to ride, those are the best days. And I know that everyone there feels that way. 2 weekends ago or 3 weekends ago, we met up at Acton Skate Park. Matt Drew, Jesse, Trinka, Nate Vandenberg, Zeb, Father Pig. The list went on. It was 10 dudes. And it was so fun. We rode the skate park and then we went to a street spot and it just kicked it. And I know that everyone went home saying that was such a fun day.
Hell yeah.
It was just nothing like it, man.
It's that's a crew of good fucking homies too. And all dudes who are all about BMX, right? Father Pig is probably one of my favorite Ontario people for BMX ever because he's just so consistent, so talented, and so fucking gnarly. And
a good dude. He
is such a solid dude. Yeah. Yeah, he won my jam a few years ago. He got Rider of the Day, so we gave him a cool 3D printed plaque for a trophy and then a bunch of cash and whatnot too. He's so good, man. So talented.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a treat to ride with him. He came out and filmed a couple clips, and it's wild to just go out with the intentions of filming with him because we pull up to this spot that I did this rail a couple years ago, and on the right side, there is a drop. So you could basically just grind it and it's fine. But I was like, dude, if you do an over pegs on this, that's the gnarliest shit ever because you're going over to the side with the drop. It's real fucking sketchy. And he unfortunately didn't pull it. Instead, he ate a fucking whole bag of shit. But he was so talented where he's like, yep, I'm just going to leave it for another day. I'll try something else. But before that, he was doing over grind to double peg down a kinked rail, trying to go for the ice pick afterwards. Such a good rider, man. He's so talented.
Yeah. I'm stoked on him too, and I hope he keeps pushing because I think he rides for McNeil now.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing cool shit and just a nice guy. Every time I see him, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to have to talk to the guy behind Vans and see if they'll get him a sponsorship.
Oh, so I guess you haven't heard that Vans Canada is
right.
Done?
Oh, fuck. Sorry, dude.
Oh, no, it's okay. But yeah, I guess I don't even know how many
I feel
people
bad
know.
now.
Most people probably don't know, but Vans Canada is officially not. The program's done.
That's sad.
And I guess I'll just explain why, because just so people know. But basically, Vans just had a bit of a rough year. I don't know if I should explain it, but they had a bad year.
I get it.
Same thing as every other business in COVID. They over-ordered. They had an overstock, and then spring came around. None of their dealers bought anything because they're all overstocked too.
Yeah.
So they just had a really bad season and basically had to cut budgets. And as the typical Canadian branch of a corporation works,
First one to go.
The Canadians have no control over their budget. They just do what they need to. They do what they do with the budget that they're given from the U.S. head office. And unfortunately, Vans Canada's budget was cut by 90% this year, the whole budget. So they
They
had to scrap all the programs and salvage a little bit of the skate.
Yeah.
And so that's unfortunate.
Sorry, dude. I didn't mean to. I totally didn't realize. I should have.
Oh, no, it's good. I mean, I think it's good to mention it on air.
Yeah.
It came up perfectly. But but yeah, I was the team manager for Canada, so that was a bummer. And we did a trip every year. We had a growing Canadian team. It was like one of the first times ever that there was like a legitimate, like, strong Canadian BMX team of like a lot of the top riders like in the country were like brought together and like put on a trip together. And that was like really special for all of us. Like we were building a legacy. Like that's how I looked at the whole Vans program. It's like a legacy. When I look back on all those trips we went on, those videos, like that was our legacy. You know, we were building one, and unfortunately it got cut short, which is really sad, but I'm hoping that it's a 1-year thing. Hopefully it comes back next year. So I'm going to be pushing for that to like come back and that it's not like officially done. So, yeah, but that's BMX, you know, companies come and go, and it's crazy because in the first podcast we talked about, imagine if Vans left, because like Vans pretty much is the foundation of BMX right now.
Dude, Vans is the only company that I will support outside of like BMX brands, because they do a lot for BMX. You know, it's one of the only brands that is like from skateboarding that actually gives a shit about BMX. And, you know, obviously, like, over the years, skaters and BMX riders have started to kind of, like, come a little bit closer, I think. But I feel like most companies, you are either one or you're none, right? Like, Nike cut off the BMX, like, part. They still do their, like, skateboarding shoes and whatnot, but they don't do BMX stuff anymore. They, like, dropped their whole team, right? And then even, like, Dew Tour. I'm like, come on, man. We can't have Dew Tour anymore. That was, like, the best contest.
But maybe it's time for something new.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? Like Dew Tour that had its time, you know? And Nike is like, I don't know. I'm never wearing a Nike skate shoe. Yeah. I don't know anybody who does.
Fair enough.
I'm Nija, I guess. And like they supported a lot of the old pros that deserve to have the consistent money coming. But there's a really interesting story with Steve Caballero on the 9 Club talking about when they cut his pay. And like, you know, the half cab is like a Vans shoe, right? And they cut his pay to give, I want to say, Jeff Rowley. They give him a bunch of more money to like, you know, to really promote his shoe.
Right.
And at the time he was just like, well, you know, that's the new up and comer. You know, I'm the cab, right? This is the half cab. This is my shoe. And, but basically it's like, because they did that, they were able to like, you know, weather the storm they were going through financially. And now the cab makes like way more money than he's ever made before.
Right.
But because of that, you know, so maybe Vans will be able to like, you know, kind of restructure a little bit and then kind of make its way back in, you know, and maybe there will be another Vans team, you know, and maybe that's like in Canada.
I think there will be, because the owner of the company truly cares about BMX and skateboarding. And that is like, does the owner of Nike care about BMX and skateboarding?
Yeah, not really.
Let's get real. Like, no, obviously not. But like, yeah, like that's, hopefully that alone will kind of like keep Vans.
I think so. I hope so. I mean, the thing with Nike was they went through and poached like all the best skaters, you know, so they didn't develop their own teams. They just like, oh, this guy's good, this guy's good, this guy's good. We'll take our giant truckload of money and back it up to their door. And like, you'd be a fool not to take it. But at the same time, it's like, and so it shut down all those core brands. Like all my favorite companies, you know, they start kind of going to the wayside because they couldn't support themselves anymore. That's like skater-owned companies, right? Which I mean, it's the same as BMX. You know, if it's like a BMX rider-owned company, it's way more important, I think, than just some corporate giant that just shows up out of nowhere.
That's a good point. I mean, I only look back on it positively because of the contests that Nike used to do, where they bought a fucking train tunnel and just built a bunch of ramps in it, or they rented out a public pool for a month and then literally just built ramps in it and stuff like that. And they also had the same aspect where they had the best dudes in BMX because they just went and gave them a truckload of money as well, right?
But they like, at least had the resources to be able to do that. So there is something there to be said for that. You know, they had the resources to be able to do that, which is like something that I think is like, you can't diminish that either, right?
Yeah.
So there was, you know, it's not all bad, I guess. But
there's pros and cons.
Yeah,
always. The pros are that they gave certain people employment in the sport. They did these contests. They funded all this stuff for the sport. The cons are that they came into the sport to use the sport as marketing for their brand. They're not like, oh, we love skateboarding, so we just want to like be in it. No, you came into it to make money off skateboarding. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that's most likely what they did. Where Vans, I mean, the dude that started it skated before he started it, right? So it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's something there, you know? Yeah, and even like there was companies in Canada that have been bought out by corporations and are now, you know, just not as cool. Like my fiance and I, we met when we both worked at West 49, and she used to work for West 49 when Billabong owned it, and they would send workers. They'd be like, hey, you got employee of the month. You're going to go to California and check out these cool skate parks and whatnot, and kind of come up with a vision for our brand. And now it's just not that at all. Now it's just a corporate job that you go to, right? Like it's weird, but I guess that's just what happens over time. And when it comes to like selling out in BMX, I've kind of always thought like, hey, if a company comes in and says, hey, we want to put some money into BMX this way, it still finds its way there, right? Like a person getting a paycheck from Nike is still a BMX rider getting a paycheck, right? And that's a good thing, but it does have negative impacts throughout the sport in its own way, which makes things difficult, right?
I think because you start to be able to influence the sport.
Yeah.
And if you but if you don't have if you're not from the sport and you don't love the sport, you don't know the history, but then you're starting to mold it in your vision of what it should be. You're like, well, the rest of us don't see it that way. But then you're like, well, this is, you know, like when you see Nigel Houston decked out head to toe in like Nike gear, you're like, he doesn't even look like a skateboarder.
Yeah.
You know, but he's a really talented skateboarder, but you're like, you don't really look like a skater. You look like a guy who's going to go play golf, but now you're on a skateboard, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, that's my 2 cents, right? What do I know about that? You know, but
yeah, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean,
but like you said, at least someone gets a paycheck from it, you know, and that's good. So that's the pros and the cons, right? So you can mold it in your own image, which once you have that kind of money coming into it, which is a little bit like, I always like err on the side of caution when it comes to that stuff, right? So.
Yeah. For the BMX program, what was cool about it is that they did it right. Like they found the right person, Mark Losey. He's one of the industry dudes, like deep in the scene, one of the core industry dudes who's been in the game forever. He basically runs BMX. Like he does all sorts of stuff that no one even has any idea. But like they came into the sport and they said, you're going to be the team manager for Nike, or however that happened. And he picked the perfect team, and he picked everything that they did was fucking amazing. Like they did it so good for the years that they were in it. Like I would say thanks to Mark Losey, and it's so cool. Like but then yeah, like the fact that like I remember when Mountain Dew they were doing these indoor skate parks in Canada, and the way that worked was Mountain Dew had an agency that they did their marketing through. That agency said, hey, let's open some free skate parks for people to like ride. And I remember going to the Montreal one, because at the time I was kind of talking to Mountain Dew, trying to get a sponsorship. Actually, I mean, they wanted to sponsor me, but the US Mountain Dew was like not down for BMX. But like I remember this skateboarder at the park in Montreal who was like kind of sour, and he was like, I don't know if sour is the word, but he was like, he was just like, this is cool, but this is here for a year or two. And then what are you guys going to do? Like you guys come in here with your giant budgets and you spend all this money on this shit to try and like market the brand, and then you're out. Like, and that didn't sit well with him. Like he felt that it's like, if you guys really cared, like you'd be in here.
Yeah.
Right. And like,
well, I mean, that's what Vans does, right? They built that bowl in Montreal to hold that contest, and now anybody can go and ride that bowl. And that bowl is fucking gnarly. That's a pro bowl. Like that is for people who ride transition as a profession. Yeah. Like it's fucking gnarly. I don't know if you've ever ridden it. It is wild. Yeah.
And there's also no excuses.
Yeah.
It's like if a pro had done a 540 on this, then you have no excuse. There's no like, oh, it just doesn't feel right. It's like, well, this other guy did it and he's the best. So
Yeah.
there's no excuses. Like if he did it, you can do it, you know? I mean, I don't know if there's like, there's no like, oh, this is just actually a shorter rail than normal. Like it's,
Right.
this is what they ride, so you ride it. So
Quebec too. Quebec really does a lot of cool shit for skateboarding and BMX. Like the fact that they even relocated the that half pipe thing at the stadium.
Big O.
Like the fact that they actually picked that up and relocated it and like kept it a thing. Like I don't know how much that would have cost, but I can't see Ontario.
Fortune.
Ontario would be like, oh, it's not safe. Let's break it. Let's destroy it and just scrap it. No,
do you know what's
Quebec.
cool about Quebec? Which is something that maybe it's kind of a little off topic, but not really. But they have the Just for Laughs festival, and they have like that. Half of that is paid for by grants from like the province of Quebec. And so like basically, I'm sure you've seen the show where they go around, they prank people on the street. It's like the government is paying for that, which
That's
I mean
fucking
that's
cool.
awesome because I'm like that's the way it should be. It's like that's what I want to see my tax dollars going towards that. Like I want my tax dollars going towards pranking people on the street.
That is cool.
Yeah, because you realize there is, laughter is the best medicine. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. And you don't see that with a lot of other things, but you always see the government grants, from Quebec. And you're like, oh, right on, man.
Yeah, they're really trying to like get people to Quebec. And like Brett Reeder, a mountain biker, one of my good friends, like he said he's going to Quebec to shoot a video.
Nice.
And like the government is like giving them a budget for it, like towards a mountain bike video.
That's fucking
And
cool.
like a mountain bike trail. Like how cool is that?
And with Brett riding it, it's going to be fucking insane. It's going to be a wild video. That guy is so good. He is like one of the most exciting people to watch ride. Him, Matt McDuff, like any of those mountain bike dudes. It's gnarly. Do you watch Darkfest at all? That
Oh,
happens?
yeah, of
Oh
course.
my God. Okay, let me explain Darkfest to you because you don't know about it and the audience who maybe doesn't know. Basically, what they do is once a year in South Africa, they send a bunch of mountain bikers there and they just build the gnarliest, biggest mountain bike trail line in the fucking world. Where this year they had a 110-foot gap, like lip to lip, that people were doing. And it's down these incredibly huge, like, mountains essentially. Like the only thing that this even compares to is Red Bull Rampage, but it's way better. It's meant for like freestyle riding. And they've got a step up that's huge. Like I think that step up, the lip for it, I mean, just looking at it, it's basically like looking at the mega ramp quarter pipe and being like, okay, that's going to be our takeoff ramp and our landing ramp is going to be 50 feet that way and 50 feet tall. Like it's insane, dude.
It's bigger than the Springfield Gorge.
It is.
Is this a local reference? Or?
No, it's The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, dude, it is insane. Yeah, that is like the gnarliest contest every year. And you know what I love about it? I really love seeing women in action sports, and they had some fucking shredders there this year, dude. Those ladies were going hard. It was very, very cool to see that.
Yeah.
It's so like I just get so pumped whenever I see that. I love seeing anybody out there and enjoying what they're doing. And dude, insane.
Yeah, like a 110-foot gap on the biggest jump. And so two people did backflips. They did 100 where they landed 120-foot backflip, like world record backflip, but it's just the biggest jump in the jump line. So you kind of like have to jump it to get through the jump line.
And how do you even spot your landing from that far away? You're just like, get your binoculars as you're jumping, like, there's where I'm going.
The warm up,
Just the slowest spin you could ever imagine. Like,
yeah.
so gnarly. The warm up jump that's like beside it is 90 feet. So if you can't do the 110 foot yet, you have to try the 90 a couple times and really start to feel it out. It's like, how fucked is that, right?
like 90 feet
Yeah.
on a mountain bike. Like that's just, it's.
And if you only did the 90-foot one,
You're
people look
kinda-
at you
yeah.
like you suck. They're like, this guy only did 90 feet. Like, what?
Everybody's doing the 110. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, and it's just followed up by like huge transfers, and the videos for that are always incredible because it's just heavy metal music, just like so gnarly, dude. Freestyle mountain biking is one of my favorite things to watch because it's just so gnarly. The dudes that are doing that, I don't fucking understand, man. It's hard to even imagine like what possesses you to want to do that, because it's so gnarly. Like,
yeah. And it is cool that there are people from our inner circle or the Ontario scene that are part of all of it, like Brett and Matt and
Definitely.
Braden, and the list goes on of like mountain bikers that have pursued it and actually made something of it and are like right in there with the dudes.
I feel like Joyride always sets up the like double high picnic tables for them to try like mountain bike tricks, where they'll bring out the even bigger lip for the foam pit.
Yeah.
Just like, I have never seen anything happen there, but I'll see it like set up once in a while.
Yeah.
Man, I wonder what a session like that is like. It's got to be fucking wild.
Yeah, that is wild. Like I personally love mountain biking, like as far as riding it. Like I love doing it. It's so fun. But it's crazy to think these guys who have the desire to do like that crazy of stuff on the mountain bikes, like whew, it's a dangerous sport. Like it is. It's like motocross, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I know we mentioned it when you did my show a while ago, but I just recently watched it again, that Jordy Len video where he drops in on that tree. So Jordy used to ride for you before he unfortunately passed away. But this dude basically went out into the woods in BC and took fucking 2x4s that are maybe 2 feet wide, like legitimately this wide, and went out and built a roll-in that went up the side of a tree that had grown and then gone sideways. So he is up 30 feet in the air on something that's this wide, and it is oververt. Like looking at it, it is legitimately oververt. It's like being on a roller coaster where it just like goes up to the top and then just drops straight down. And the guy dropped in on it, and it's like the gnarliest thing ever. That dude was so unreal.
Yeah, iconic feature and
Yeah.
video, and yeah, so much cool. I love that side of mountain biking, just creating crazy shit in the woods. And
There was a shirt that either they made as merch for that, or it was somebody who had posted it in like a screen printing group that I'm in, where it's like, it's the tree and then him dropping in, but it's like the full front of a shirt. And I was like,
sick.
fuck, man, that's so wild.
Long live Jordy.
Yeah, dude, nobody fucking does it like him. Like, so gnarly.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually grew up on Vancouver Island until I was 13, and I'm from Parksville, which is the same town as Jordy. So he was like my idol when I was a kid. Like I'm more BMX guy, but my childhood was definitely mountain bike, being from Vancouver Island. And Jordy, when I was in grade 4, or grade 3, he came and did like a public speech at my school, at Parksville Elementary School. He like hopped on a couple tables and then like did like a speech about being a pro mountain biker. And he was like the local town pro, and pretty cool. Like my friend had a house just up the street from his, and we would go ride our mountain bikes in his backyard, and they would do backflips, and like we wouldn't ride the big lines, but we would just watch it. And man, so inspirational and such a nice guy. In one of my buddy's birthdays for like grade 5, we did a training course with Jordy Lunn, where he basically showed us how to ride downhill and like hit corners, and it was like a teacher.
So gnarly.
It's so cool that like, yeah, so awesome. I'm so glad I got to have that much influence from him when I was young. Just so happened to be from the same town. It's pretty cool. Just
Yeah,
a fun
dude.
fact, kind of off topic, or
Yeah.
not off topic, but
Yeah, he really was one of those people who died doing what he loved, you know? Like, you always hear that phrase, but I think that he especially, I mean, I never met him, I never talked to him, but just looking in from the outside, I feel like that's one of those situations, unfortunately. But
yeah, all around, just one of those dudes that just was the coolest, like most stoked, just nice to everyone. Long live motherfucking Jordy Lunn.
hell yeah, man. So good.
Yeah.
Oh, man. How you feeling?
Feel pretty good.
Like, we're at
Yeah.
another hour, it looks
We've
like.
done 2.5 here, so yeah, no, this is good.
Very
Thank you
cool.
guys for coming. This
Yeah,
was really
no problem.
fun.
It was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great to sit down and chat with you and kind of help you through the process, it seems. But yeah, dude, thank you so much. I'd love to come on any other time. So if you ever want to have me back on, it's just nice to chat with you.
Dude, definitely. It's always fun, and we'll ride the garage again. And just make this a normal occurrence.
Love it.
Yeah, that's what's another fun thing about podcasts, and another reason why I started it was to have a reason to get my friends together. You know, like you want to hang out with friends, and it's reality. It's not materialistic, but a lot of the time you kind of need something to bring your friends together. You know, I need help moving a couch. Can you come help me? Or whatever it is. Like sometimes as you get older, you kind of need some reason to get together with someone. And this is the coolest reason to like get friends over.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah. The other thing too is that you'll have these conversations forever, right? Like those are some of the things that you think about, right? Where I've had some pretty cool conversations with my friends off air, but then it's always like, oh, in 20 years, I'm not going to remember that, right? And even some of the conversations I've had with people on air, I can't remember some of it, but I can always go back and listen to it, right? And I've always got that. So at least for me, whenever I'm podcasting, that's my main thing is like, make sure it's a good conversation because I'm going to want to go back and listen to it in a long time. So
that is cool. I never thought about that, but I can totally see that. Like old people probably look at the photos that they took. Like Brian Kaczynski is someone who's always preached wherever you go, whatever you do, make sure you take a ton of photos. Cause when you're older, that's what you're going to look back on. And he always said that. And it's so true. And it's so cool to think that these can be things that you listen to when you're older and watch when you're older. That is so fucking cool.
And shout out to Brian, because Brian is one of those guests that I had on my show where I had mentioned earlier, I have maybe 10, 15 guests that always reach out and just see how I'm doing. Brian is one of those guys. Brian is such a great guest on a podcast. 100% recommend that you get him on your show because he's so knowledgeable about BMX. He cares so much about BMX, and he is the reason that I was able to have Van Homan on my show because he put in a good word for me. And you know what? That really means a lot to me. And I think that Brian goes into anything with the best intentions as well. And he is such a fucking shredder where, like, dude, you have to respect his riding. He's so good.
Yeah, so good, and one of those guys who can't treat someone badly.
Yeah,
he's every bone in his body is good. It seems like, you know, he's just such a good dude.
Yeah, definitely. One of the gnarliest dudes in BMX too. He's just he's fucking so tough. Yeah. You know, he's built tough, that's for sure.
Definitely. Well, Wayne,
thank you for having me on here. It was awesome. I didn't think I'd have a lot to talk about, so it's kind of nice that we did have some stuff that we could talk about and find common ground, you know, for the most part, because I don't know a lot about BMX other than Three of the Sky. So, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks for coming. And it was also cool to hear about the non-BMX stuff, like with your life. And
yeah, well, thank you.
Really, yeah, that shit really interests me because, I mean, those are the things that like everyone can relate to. Like BMX is something that a lot of people can relate to, but parenthood or just family, like that's almost a deeper thing for like everyone. And
yeah
I don't know, probably should have ended it before I said that.
Yeah, it's all good.
All good.
All right, boys.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, and I guess we'll see you next time. I'm very excited to keep listening to your show, by the way.
Thank you. And I'm excited to keep listening to yours, because it's going to get fired back up after this, right?
Oh, probably. I miss doing this, man. It's a good quick thing to, you know, get me back into it. I'm sure I'll be itching for it in a couple weeks. So.
Hell yeah. Bikes and Beyond, episode 4. See you guys next time.